towards Sunday afternoon, and for the most part it'll be another cloudy and damp day for many of us. However, behind that frontal system across Northern Ireland, western parts of Scotland, there will be some brightness through the afternoon. Temperatures up a touch compared to what we saw on Saturday, highs of 14 or 15 degrees in the south. Into the start of Monday, that weather front clears away towards the southeast, and then it does leave a much brighter day than we've seen recently. High pressure very much in charge, bringing us those settled conditions and plenty of sunshine on offer, particularly compared to what we've seen over recent days. That sunshine looks like it's lasting into Tuesday and perhaps Wednesday as well, and those temperatures are still around about average, but feeling pleasant in any sunshine.
We can expect clear skies, leading to a light and warm day ahead. Lovely. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment. This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory. Don't miss My Big Opinion, Mark Meets, and My Take at 10. Democracy is a funny old thing. And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it. Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it. That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date. Or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Good morning to you. It's Remembrance Sunday, and today GB News pays tribute to those who sacrificed their lives for our freedom.
Well, events began last night with the royal family leading the nation at the Royal British Legion's Festival of Remembrance.
And at 11 this morning, the King will guide the nation through 2 minutes of silence, remembering all those who served our country.
And of course, what we all wanted to look out for was the Princess of Wales, and she did indeed delight the nation as she returned to official duties at last night's service with William at her side.
Also today, GB News speaks to the incredible 100-year-old lady whose service to the country during the war will not be forgotten.
And then there's Trump's clean sweep. The comeback king wins the state of Arizona, meaning that he has now won all 7 swing states.
Here's a bit of tittle-tattle for you. What did the late Queen think of Boris Johnson? Did she disapprove? Well, that's the rumour, as a new book claims Britain's longest-reigning monarch had little time with the former Prime Minister.
Good morning. The inquest is underway as England suffer yet another late defeat against old rivals Australia in a thrilling autumn international at Twickenham. And in the Premier League, Pep Guardiola suffers a 4th successive defeat for the first time in his managerial career as Manchester City are beaten again, this time at Brighton.
It's been a cloudy start for many of us today, but there is some sunshine on the way into the new working week. Join me later for the full forecast with all the details.
It's just gone 6 o'clock. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Anne Diamond, and this is GB News Breakfast.
Morning to you.
Morning, morning.
What's that you looking at there?
Well, they're bringing back Bullseye.
Yes,
You'll like
really?
this. Yeah. I'm not sure who's going to host it.
It's that Freddie Flintoff.
Oh, is it? Oh, he'll be perfect for it, actually.
Do you think?
Yeah, don't you?
No.
Oh, why
I think he might.
No, I'm sorry. I don't. Sorry, I got to clean my glasses. Well, I just think this is... I hate it when they bring this stuff back. It never works.
No, I doubt it will now. I mean, our appetite for that sort of thing, darts on telly, is
of its time. Although darts, I can see why it might have come together, this idea, because darts is up towards the popularity it had in the 80s when Bullseye was in its pomp.
Yeah, darts is coming back, but in that sort of... I don't know, in that framework. It was Jim Bowen, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
What was his... The Sun today asks, what was his most famous lines, his catchphrases?
Yeah, super smashing great.
Super smashing great. Yeah. Look at what you could have won. Yeah. Apparently he did that. So the Sun today is doing a quiz on in which show were these sort of catchphrases known. In which show did Leslie Crowther ask contestants, "Come on down"?
The Price is
Right.
Yeah, well done. Where did Bruce Forsyth greet audiences with "Nice to see you, to see
Generation
you"?
Game.
Nice. Yes, well done. Yeah. These are actually all very easy to those of a certain persuasion, I suppose.
Certain age.
Yeah, a certain age. What family game show had presenters including Max Bygraves and Les Dennis?
Family Fortunes.
Oh, all right. Well done. Too quick. Fingers on buzzers. On which computer screen quiz did Roy Walker say...
Catchphrase.
Yes, that's right. And his catchphrase was, "It's good,
It's good, but it's not right."
That's right. Well
See what you
done.
see.
Yeah.
See what you see.
Yeah. Chris Tarrant... I mean, this is ridiculously easy. Chris Tarrant used to ask contestants, "Do you want to phone a friend?" On which...
Yeah.
It goes on like that. But it's quite a good quiz.
It was funny on Bullseye when I think it was people in Birmingham, right in the middle of the country, used to win a speedboat.
Oh, yeah,
Yes.
it was a speedboat.
That's right.
It's always
It's terribly impressive.
Yeah. I went on the set of that once because they shot it at Central in Nottingham. And the set, as you will find out if you ever visit TV studios, apart from this one, because it's new, sets tend to be very tatty.
Unbelievable.
And falling apart and literally stuck together with tape and all the rest of it. And the Bullseye set really was very wobbly.
And because it was shot at Central, that's why I was on it quite a lot. Because I was on it at least twice that I remember, yeah.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
My friend at school, his mum was on The Price is Right, and she won this in 1986.
Yeah.
And she won an answer phone.
Oh.
I've never heard of it, but it was basically he got in school on Monday and he was bragging about it. He said, "Well, it's just a tape recorder, isn't it?" Which it was, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was, but it was triggered by the phone, and then you used to get in at night and press the button, and all of the answers would come out.
So you used to work at Lenton Lane?
I worked at Lenton Lane as well, yeah.
Oh, you see, those were the days. I used to go into Lenton Lane to do Central News East.
Yes, that's right.
But I did it when I was a student, and I used to do the subtitles, the live subtitles for the late night bulletin.
You did live subtitles? What, you typed them out?
Yeah,
it
was a bit like shorthand typing. There were sort of short keys that you could press. And so I used to actually do the subtitles.
Gosh.
Which was very exciting. He used to pay me £50, which was a load of money.
It's a fortune in those days.
Well, it was, 1992.
Yeah.
For a student, 50 quid for doing that. Used to love it. We were queuing out the door to get our turn to do that.
New Faces, do you remember that?
Oh, yes, New Faces. I mean, that was an ATV show. Or
Yeah,
an ATV
just briefly, there was a teacher at my school. She brought in her younger sister to sing in front of us because she was going to be on New Faces that weekend, and it really worked because although she finished second on the night, our votes at school got her to number one, and because you still be able to vote during the week. So we got her there, and then she appeared in the final, finished bottom.
Oh. So we don't know who she is.
Yeah, her name was Louisa. Her name was Louisa Shaw, but I don't think she did anything.
No. Did anything after that?
Don't think so.
Ignominious demise.
It used to depend on the song they got, though, didn't it? Sorry.
Well, yeah.
Well, no, if it was because it was a cover song. If they got a song that wasn't particularly favourite,
Their own, presumably.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. Talking of celebrities like that, there are a lot of. Sorry, you're obviously.
No, I'm just looking. I'm just looking at the clock.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the clock.
We'll talk about that later. It's just that the celebrities that all endorsed Kamala Harris. Are all sort of hanging their heads in shame at the moment, and a lot of the columnists in today's papers are saying, "Yeah, you don't. If you're really hard up and worried about how you're going to pay the rent and buy the food, you don't want Oprah Winfrey telling you how to vote."
No,
and that's the celebrity thing may well have played against Kamala instead of for. Which is interesting, but a lot of the columnists are saying that today.
I've said for a long time, celebrities should stay out of politics. On all sides, on all sides. Anyway, we better crack on, because it's 7 minutes past 6 already. It is one of the most solemn days of the year, Remembrance Sunday. And today and tomorrow, of course, millions will pause to reflect on the sacrifices of our veterans.
Yes, the King and other members of the royal family and government will gather at the Cenotaph to remember all those who have died in the line of duty.
Well, last night the royal family joined together. Without the Queen, though, she's recovering from a chest infection. But they were at the Royal Albert Hall for the Festival of Remembrance.
It also marked, of course, the Princess of Wales's return to official duties, and William was always there by her side. A lot of people this morning noting that they had their hands, they almost clasped each other's hands. They had their hands on each other's backs throughout. It was clearly a big deal for them as well.
Oh, it's nice that it was done. Well, meanwhile, and this is remarkable, a 100-year-old veteran is sharing memories which will bring a tear to her eye this Remembrance Sunday.
Yeah, she's Dorothy Brown, and she served as a visual signaller in the Women's Royal Naval Service during the Second World War. Will Hollis went to visit her at her Hertfordshire home.
I always want to cry in remembering my youthful friends who were killed during the war.
80 years have passed since Dorothea Barron served to protect her country. In 1943, aged 18, she joined the Women's Royal Naval Service and, as a visual signaller, trained the men heading to Normandy.
I feel very proud that I did my bit for my country.
Stationed in Scotland, she kept her role a secret.
You never talked about your job to anybody, so you didn't know what the sailor who was sitting beside you in the train did.
Now, living in Hertfordshire, she's sharing her story with the world. Reaching her 100th birthday, the centenarian celebrated with a trip in a Spitfire, plus a party organised by her daughter Katie. And a very special card.
This brings our warmest congratulations and heartfelt good wishes on such a special occasion. Wow. And it's signed Charles R. and Camilla R. And your name's at the bottom of the card. I have huge respect and admiration for her. My breath is taken away by the fact that she has reached 100. That is no mean achievement.
Despite her age, Dorothea says yoga keeps her body young. And her memories of Britain at war are as vivid today as the moment they were made.
I can still remember London burning when they concentrated one day and night on London, and it was a mass of flames.
Some memories are easier to carry than others.
Our youth was taken away. There were no teenagers. You had dances, but you were dancing in uniform.
As the country pauses this Remembrance Sunday, Dorothea will too.
I feel very proud that we're still remembering those people who gave their youth for their country. And they were doing it for their country.
Will Hollis, GB News, Hertfordshire.
Remarkable. Absolutely remarkable. And I always think that Remembrance Sunday is not just about remembering those who died, but that's remembering people like Dorothy, who are still with us.
Yes,
who did so much. What a remarkable lady.
And, she was talking about how they all went to dances, because they had a very active social life in the forces and things like that there, but they all did it in uniform. There was something very special about when you look back at those photographs, the fact that, you had to get on with living and being young and enjoying yourself as well. And they did so, but in uniform.
Yeah, everything will have been tainted with it. So you see it a little bit through rose-tinted spectacles. Anyway, Dorothy herself will be taking part in our Remembrance coverage from 10 o'clock this morning with Michael Portillo. And she's going to talk to Michael here in the studio about all of her experiences.
Now, I don't know what you're going to think about this. I'm not sure we are very happy about this, but the late Queen's final thoughts about Boris Johnson have been unveiled by Tim Shipman today. He has serialised his latest book called No Way Out in the Sunday Times.
Well, apparently it shines a light on the scenes of drama of Johnson proroguing Parliament back in 2019, and royal courtiers revealed that the Queen wanted to hang on long enough to see Boris off the premises.
What do you think of that? Well, joining us now is Deputy Editor of The Spectator UK, Freddie Gray. What do you think of it, Freddie?
Good morning. Well, first of all, let's get our respect for Tim Shipman out the way. He's always been able to dig up these great stories for his books, which are sort of essential reading for everyone in Westminster. However, I would say the details of what happened with the Queen and Brexit are still extremely vague, despite reading this extract. I haven't read the whole book. I think what's going on is that if you talk to royal sources who are in favour of Remain, who are against Brexit, they will tell you that the Queen was horrified at Boris Johnson's behaviour, absolutely appalled, etc., etc. If you speak to sort of Brexiteers in royal circles, and there are a few, they will say, oh, she secretly and knowingly winked along with the plan.
Yeah.
You see, and so this is the thing. So we don't really know. But there is this quote, could be true or not, that in her final days, when because Boris Johnson quit just before she died, she said, well, at least I won't have that idiot organising my funeral now. I can't hear her saying that.
I can't hear her saying that.
But that, to me, sounds like a passionate Remainer in royal circles who would hate Boris.
Even if it was all perfectly true, and it is a big if, because you say it's all third, fourth, fifth hand, I actually don't want to know. You know, the Queen will have had private thoughts about everything that went on. I don't want to know. Let them stay private.
Well, the controversy is about prorogation, suspending Parliament, which obviously Boris Johnson did to get Brexit through, and all this sort of drama and tremendously risky political operation, and his obligation to inform the monarch of what he was doing. So she did know. It's what she thought about it that I don't think we get a clear sense of.
I mean, as far as the relationship always goes between Prime Minister and monarch, the idea of him wanting to prorogue Parliament must have... I mean, it was a highly controversial, and she would have known how controversial that
She would have known how controversial it was, and
she might have been uncomfortable about it.
My sense, reading between the lines, is that a lot of people think that had Charles been king, he would have been more publicly uncomfortable with it, whereas the Queen was much more removed and was not willing to say what she thought. And again, that's why I think the Queen was so effective, is that, because she never, ever expressed her political opinions, really.
And isn't that why it feels slightly disrespectful to be talking about what courtiers say her inner thoughts were now, when she's dead?
I'm afraid I tend towards wanting to know information, not wanting to know information.
Because you're a heartless hack, Freddie.
It's because I'm a heartless hack, and also I do find it, and I find royal sources are frustrating the way they nod and wink without actually telling you anything.
And they hide behind their anonymity, don't they?
Quite.
So they could actually say anything.
Quite. Yeah.
Meanwhile, the royals were told yesterday it could be wheeled out to sort of soften the transition with the next administration in the United States to try and save our special relationship. Well, I'll tell you what, I mean, the government's on a really hard footing here, especially when you see now that Arizona's been taken by Trump. Clean sweep of all the swing states, popular vote, the houses, he's got the lot. Clearly, this is what the American people really wanted.
Well, funnily enough, I was at the ambassador's house the night before the election in DC, and I was there in 2016 as well. And what's funny is that the British embassy in Washington, their position hasn't changed on Trump. You know, they're not against him, they're not pro him. They try and be professional, but they are. It's very hard for governments to adapt to Trump world because it's so strange. I think what they've got to do now, though, is see that he really does have a mandate. You know, before a lot of people would dismiss him as a sort of freakish victory in 2016, would never happen again. Now you can see he has this huge popular movement behind him. We have to respect him as a government, and I think quite right to wheel the royals out for him. You know, he's the president of our greatest. He will be the president of our greatest ally, and that's what the monarchy's for: is to you know, serve as the face of Britain in these situations. And Donald Trump, nothing excites him more than monarchy. So if we wheel out the monarchy for him, he will appreciate it, and we need him to be our friend.
What about this? Well, it's more than a rumour. It's a sort of leak almost that Rachel Reeves is going to be quite outspoken in her next speech, saying that, you know, if he's going to impose tariffs, we'll do the same. I mean, she's talking tough, anticipating that he is going to talk tough. But couldn't that actually muddy the waters now?
It might, and I think, you know, Trump has said privately he's not a great fan of Keir Starmer. I think that Rachel Reeves, it's probably a bit of game of chicken on both sides. But, I mean, the problem with Britain threatening retaliatory tariffs is that the American economy is far, far bigger and more powerful than ours. Retaliatory tariffs from Britain would be like water off a duck's back.
Yeah.
I mean,
but also saying it now when we don't actually know how he's going to treat Britain. I mean, there are also rumours that he may well favour us.
Well, he may well favour it. It's also complicated for Labour because of the European reset. So the fact that we are currently renegotiating our trade position with the European Union at the same time as we have to do this complicated renegotiation with Donald Trump and tariffs puts us in a bit of a bind. And also, particularly with China, Labour's looking a lot towards Chinese investment. Donald Trump's not going to like that. So Britain has to be very, very careful how we tread with the Trump administration. It will be very, very interesting to see how Labour handle it. I tend to think that, you know, Nigel Farage, for all his merits, tends to exaggerate the extent to which Trump world is outraged by Labour. I mean, I think Trump probably met Keir Starmer, didn't particularly like him. Keir Starmer came away saying Trump really liked me, but I think Trump didn't really. But I think, you know, they're not, Labour is not in quite as ill favour with Trump world as some people would lead you to believe.
Yeah, well, he's not going to just write us off, is he? But even so, there's work
he'd certainly
to be done.
much prefer a Conservative government or Nigel Farage as Prime Minister. That's definitely true.
Freddie, we'll see you later. Thank you very much indeed.
Great plan.
Let's just remind you of our poll of the day today, which is a totally different issue, actually, but you know we like to engage you on a whole host of different things. Are schools doing enough to make sure that children understand the sacrifices of our veterans, or indeed, you know, what people in the armed forces actually do? We'll bring you the live result throughout the day and the final result in Nana's show later.
And, of course, for all our latest polls and news about polls and how to vote in the polls, just go to gbnews.com/poll.
Right, it is 19 minutes past 6. Let's have a look at some of the other key stories this morning.
Some farmers are threatening to disrupt the food supply chain by withholding produce and livestock. That's if the Treasury doesn't row back on inheritance tax plans for family farms worth over £1 million. Yesterday, the National Farmers Union descended on London, warning the government farmers' response might be militant.
17 people have been injured after two buses crashed into each other in Manchester yesterday morning. It's been confirmed no one was seriously hurt. Rochdale Road has since reopened.
Fortnum and Mason have apologised for a failure of communication to Paralympians who were not invited to a party for Paris medalists at Buckingham Palace. Team GB and Paralympics GB athletes were hosted at a reception at the royal residence on Thursday to meet the King, though. Zach Shaw, a Paralympic sprinter, said he'd trawled through his emails to find an invite to the after-party, but neither him nor his partner, who's also a Paralympic sprinter, could find their invitation.
The NFU, if it's saying, you know, there will be a militant response, it's not what they were saying to us yesterday.
No.
And to be fair, they didn't descend on London yesterday. It was a Lord Mayor's show.
Absolutely. And I was watching the Lord Mayor's show, and it was brilliant. But our man who was talking to us yesterday was there driving the tractor. Yeah, and it was just that tractor with the notices on it saying, you know, we provide food, we grow beef, you know, we produce milk and all the rest of it. It wasn't an enormous thing.
No, and I think the NFU, and I've sort of known a lot about the NFU over the years. I'm from a farming area with farming in the family. And the NFU have always been there, but they're going to get a shock with this because they are not doing what farmers want them to do.
No, it's nowhere near big enough or loud enough, I don't think, to make any sort of difference. You could have missed their tractor in the Lord Mayor's show yesterday.
And the fact they said there's going to be 1,800 farmers going down on the 19th to sort of get onto the parliamentary estate and meet MPs. Tell you now, the only MPs who will come out to meet them, and there may be lots, will be people who agree with them.
Yes.
And it will make no difference whatsoever to anything.
And very little to difference to public perception, I would have thought, or to press coverage, which I would have thought in this situation is quite important. Certainly you were very vocal about it sitting at home yesterday because our inbox was flooded with people saying, that man speaks like a politician.
Yeah.
And, you know, and doesn't sound as though he's engaged enough with the problem. And I can understand the frustration of farmers. So he didn't impress you, basically, yesterday.
The NFU's got a lot of work to do if you want to keep farmers on side. Anyway, let us know what you think. As always, gbnews.com/yoursay. Here's the weather.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening, welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. It's been a cloudy day for most of us, as it has been over the past couple of weeks, but there is some brighter interludes on the way as we head in towards next week. But before we get there, these weather fronts out towards the west of the UK will slowly push their way eastwards over the rest of the weekend before we see high pressure redeveloping and bringing us some brighter weather. Back to Saturday evening though, and generally a cloudy and damp end to the day for the most of us. Some clear spells persisting across northern parts of Scotland, perhaps eastern parts of England as well. But we see this weather front arriving in the northwest into the early hours of Sunday morning, bringing some heavy rain in places. Generally a mild night for the most part, but turning a little chillier where we see those clear spells, perhaps even a touch of frost to start with across eastern parts of Scotland. Otherwise, to start on Sunday, generally a cloudy and damp day, particularly for western parts of Scotland. This band of rain perhaps turning heavy at times, particularly over any high ground. And for northern England and Northern Ireland too, generally a very cloudy and bit of a damp start to the day. For central, southern parts of England, parts of Wales, southwest England as well, generally a bit of a dry start, albeit quite a cloudy start. There will be some clearer spells, particularly across eastern parts of England. We might see some sunshine here through the morning, but for the most part, it will be a cloudy start to the day on Sunday. That weather front across parts of Scotland sinks its way south and eastwards as we go in towards Sunday afternoon, and for the most part, it'll be another cloudy and damp day for many of us. However, behind that frontal system, across Northern Ireland, western parts of Scotland, there will be some brightness through the afternoon. Temperatures up a touch compared to what we saw on Saturday, highs of 14 or 15 degrees in the south. Into the start of Monday, that weather front clears away towards the southeast, and then it does leave a much brighter day than we've seen recently. High pressure very much in charge, bringing us those settled conditions and plenty of sunshine on offer, particularly compared to what we've seen over recent days. That sunshine looks like it's lasting into Tuesday and perhaps Wednesday as well, and those temperatures are still around about average, but feeling pleasant in any sunshine.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Is that a slight indication of nice weather
Apparently,
this week?
according to the weather journalists
What?
in the Sunday papers, they say the sun is... Do you remember? The sun is going to come out this week.
I mean, look, I believe it when I see it.
Because, I mean, everybody's beginning to mumble. Oh, even though it is November, the weather has been very dismal. But apparently we're going to get some sunshine this coming week.
We put Christmas lights up outside last night.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
I think it might be a little bit early.
No, it doesn't matter. We need a bit of
But
twinkle, don't we?
so the garden's very twinkly. The house won't be done for a while.
Have you got your lights up yet? You got your tree ready, yeah?
My sister-in-law's got the whole house done.
Yeah? Well, you see, I think we need it. We need a bit of twinkle.
We do. Right, still to come, we're going to be back with more Remembrance Sunday events taking place today. That's next.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark meets at My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Australian chef David Thompson is opening a new restaurant, Long Chim. The name, which translates roughly as come and try, already has locations in Sydney, Perth and Dubai, and previously operated in Melbourne and Singapore. It marks a return to London for Thompson, whose Belgravia haunt Naarm closed in 2012. But that earned him accolades, including, in 2002, the first Michelin star awarded to a Thai restaurant. So you've mentioned Bangkok there. What is your love for Thai food? Describe to us why you think Thai food is such a great cuisine.
It's endlessly complex and satisfying. It just resonates on the palate. For me, as a cook, it offers a challenge, and the way that you cook it is you chase taste. You don't follow a recipe, you follow your sense of taste. And so with all these dishes that you'll taste today, but also in the restaurant that we're opening, it's all about a sequence of taste and seasoning that has some balance.
What is this dish?
This is something called gengari gung, which is an aromatic curry of prawns.
Lovely looking prawns, yes.
They're not too bad. And it's with something strange called water bamboo, which we found up in Chinatown just the other day. And it's a perfect accompaniment. I'll just take a little.
Yes. Describe that perfect accompaniment to me again. Water
bamboo.
What is it? Water bamboo, yeah.
And you would not know of it, because I didn't know of it that much either. And it tastes like a little bit of like young coconut meat. So it's perfect with these prawns and this curry. And what you need to have with this curry, because this is the way that Thai food works, an interplay of flavours. This little cucumber salad on the side, and that helps to bring out the spice and the sweetness and the savoury quality.
I must say, all of this looks so lovely.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
6:29. Now, today is going to mark a very special moment in the life of Neil Roberts as he plays the last post at his 50th Remembrance service in a row. And it's a really hard thing to do, the last post.
I can imagine, yes, because it's just up to you. You're the only one. And it has to be crystal clear. Oh. But also, if you're involved, if you're a serving soldier and you've lost friends and things, how do you get through it? I don't know how you keep your composure. Well, our West Midlands reporter, Jack Carson, has been to meet him.
A final rehearsal before the big moment.
When Neil Roberts plays the last post at Pembridge's Remembrance service today, it will be the 50th year in a row he has done it. Neil grew up in the Herefordshire village, first picking up a trumpet when he was at primary school.
I started to try and play the guitar. I was taking lessons on the guitar, but I went to the local lesson and the teacher didn't turn up. So I was left there without a teacher, so I ambled around, found a trumpet, picked it up and never put it down again. So I learnt the trumpet instead of the guitar. And my local bandmaster suggested that I come and sound the last post for Armistice. So I turned up with my shorts on and went to sound the last post, and I've been doing it ever since, Jack.
Throughout the half a century he's been playing the bugle call, challenges like academic exams, working in London, having a family and travel issues have all tried to get in the way, but all of them have failed to stop him. Neil explains why he hasn't strayed away from the commitment.
Obviously, when I started at 12, I had some sense of what Remembrance Sunday was, but it has grown on me over the years. And then the fact that I've gone back every year, and this is my 50th time, it resonates the fact that it's an important role to play, and I'm glad I do it. I don't do it for the musicianship, because I've given up the trumpet, but I do it for the duty and the constant and the ability to participate in what is a very respectful remembrance process.
Over in Pembridge, preparations for the Remembrance Sunday service are underway. Graham Hudson is the chairman of the Royal British Legion branch here, and he wants to make sure Neil is recognised on this momentous occasion.
Thank you so much, and I hope you enjoy the day. We've got the Vice Lord Lieutenant. This is an unusual accolade for you, presenting you with a county certificate. I shall give my normal bottle of whiskey to you, and we have and will have a really big turnout for you. We can't clap because it's a formal occasion, but people will be looking at you and saying thank you.
As the last post sounds today, the nation will fall silent, and with his trumpet polished, Neil's ready for the 50th year in a row. Jack Carson, GB News.
Oh, good on him.
I mean, our first impression was he doesn't look old enough to have played every year for 50 years.
Well, if he did the first one at 12,
yeah,
as he was
that's
saying,
understandable.
But I mean, it's a very difficult piece to play, which is why even at some of the big occasions you hear it go wrong and a bit squeaky and what have you. But it's such a wonderful piece, carries so much emotion to it. So well done him. I think that's really nice, and nice that he's being thanked in the way that he is being.
And by the way, we did spot, like you, that his name is spelt Niall, but apparently he likes it to be pronounced Neil.
Yeah, there's a few like that. I don't understand quite. It's like when you get Sarah and Sarah, you know, one's got an H and one hasn't, but sometimes you get people spelt Sarah who say I want to be called Sarah, and vice versa.
Yeah.
Is that how you're meant to win? How are you meant to get it right on these occasions?
Yeah.
But we try our best.
Quite a few people already getting in touch saying they too feel very awkward about hearing what the Queen is alleged to have said.
Yes.
About, for instance, Boris Johnson. It's in the Sunday Times today, and Freddie was talking about it earlier, saying, you know, she was discreet enough not to tell us when she was alive. It's wrong to sort of insinuate that that's what she felt, even if the checkout is good. You know, even if your sources are good. Even Freddie said it depends which sources you speak to, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
I must say, I feel very uncomfortable about hearing what the Queen said in private to her courtiers or something like that now. It's wrong now, isn't it?
I really think so. No disregard to Tim Shipman, you know, it's a good story. It's a good story, he's got books to sell. But I'm just uncomfortable with it. Do we have to look behind the curtain on every occasion? Why can't we just let some things be private?
Yeah.
She's not going to like everything that every Prime Minister does.
No, well, Thelma makes that point. Our late Queen had dealings with many Prime Ministers. She probably didn't like half of them. No, but she knew that wasn't her duty to like them or not like them.
No.
She just had to deal with them.
Anyway, keep your thoughts coming through. gbnews.com/yoursay. Now, as I was putting... actually, it wasn't me. I was in bed when the Christmas lights went up yesterday.
Oh, you had somebody to do it for you?
Well, husband did it. Because he's very good at things
very
like
convenient.
that. So, anyway, the Christmas lights are up outside. So we are getting ready for Christmas. How about having your Christmas on us this year with a whole load of cash? And
goodies.
Goodies and shopping vouchers and all sorts of stuff. If you want to take part, if you fancy the chances of winning that, here's how you enter.
You could win Christmas on us this year, all magically delivered to you in time for the big day. There's cash, £20,025 in tax-free cash to make your new year go with a bang. There's also £5,000 to spend on all the gifts. We've also got Christmas lunch for you, with £500 in vouchers to spend at your favourite supermarket. And finally, a festive GB News goodie bag. For another chance to win, call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Text cash to 63232.
The reality of war, without being too horrible, but also about, the way people think about it and
That's an interesting idea, isn't it?
It is, isn't it? What movie would you recommend? Anyway, we'll be back within a couple of minutes and with Aidan with the sport. You're watching GB News Breakfast with me and him.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Tell us about this film, because it's obviously come from your own experiences.
We wanted to create something for the entertainment industry that wasn't just another kind of dull documentary. I mean, some of them are brilliant, they're very informative, but you kind of leave a bit bewildered and a little bit kind of flat. So we thought, I've got a passion for writing and you've obviously got an unbounded knowledge on the subject. Why don't we create a film with a kind of satirical look on eating disorders?
So this came it's been made 20 years after your own...
It is 20 years.
20 years,
practically to the day.
So Samantha, you suffered with OCD and an eating disorder as well?
Yes.
And that's when your mum became a counsellor, is that right?
A little bit later on, I think we spent a bit of time in the system and I realised that it wasn't working for us. So I took it on myself to learn as much as I could about the subject.
I call it a tragedy, probably the wrong word, but
suffering. No, it is a tragedy because mental ill health and eating disorders destroy the lives of not only the sufferers but their families as well.
But you've turned that into something so positive and so
it's amazing, really, that 20 years ago our story was just beginning, and 20 years on, we've done what we've done. But I have to say that very little has changed in the system.
I've heard that.
And I think that's what we're passionate about.
Yeah, so...
that was why we wanted to... I mean, I work with families every day and I see the destruction that eating disorders and other mental illnesses not just bring to the sufferer, but the whole family.
Yeah.
And I think that's what really passions me, because obviously 20 years ago we were there. And I just feel that so much more needs to be done. And I think with eating disorders, there is still a lot of misunderstanding around the subject.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Aidan's here with all the sport at 6:40. Mystic McGee, we call you.
Well, yeah, I mean...
Viewers asking us to show a clip from yesterday where you predicted England would beat Australia at the rugby.
I was so
Because
confident.
Australia are so bad.
Well, they are.
So bad.
They are bad. They are
better than us.
I do think... Yeah, exactly. It doesn't say much, though, unfortunately. I do think Australia are showing signs that renaissance they're chasing is they're green shoots of recovery, shall we say, if I was the Chancellor of the Exchequer.
That's an awfully good way to cover up the fact that you got it wrong.
Yeah, I know. Well, listen, you know the rules, right? If I get it right, we show it everywhere. If we don't, I don't remind you at all.
Then you obfuscate.
You just remind me. But nonetheless, look, it was a thrilling game. I'll say that. 42-35 37 for Australia. England actually won it probably twice in the last 10-15 minutes and still contrived to throw it away. And we said yesterday, didn't we, about the psychological issue, how important that is in rugby. This is the 4th time in a row that England have thrown away leads late on. Now, it's one thing doing it against
you did
Africa,
actually say that
New
yesterday.
Zealand. Yeah, I mean, look at the margins of defeat in the last 4 games. 5 points, 2 points, 7 points and 1 point. I mean, last week, Steve Borthwick was in a press conference and he shut down a reporter who said, is there a psychological issue here? Why is it you're going so deep into games, but you just can't see the job through? He said, is there an issue here with the psychology of your players? And he just went, no. Can't get away with saying that now, because this has happened against an inferior side. Jamie George, the captain, said it was unforgivable to concede so many tries at home. They were 15-3 up in the first half as well, so they had it in their hands, not just in the latter stages of the game, but also in the first half as well. And I'm just wondering where this side goes from here, because I think that they reached the semi-finals of the World Cup last year, which most people wouldn't have expected them to achieve, but it was such a prolonged tournament that you saw about 6 different shades of England. I would argue they only played 2 decent matches in the entire tournament. It was the first game against Argentina and in the semi-final. So Steve Borthwick has certainly got questions to answer here. As regards, I mean, I think the RFU would be inclined to give him a bit more time. It was a serious job that he took over. But Eddie Jones, who also managed Australia recently, I mean, his side lost yesterday against France, but he warned of this 5 years ago. He said losing is becoming a habit, and that was in 2019. And that's somebody who had relative success as an England manager. But later on today, we've got the Wales against Fiji, Scotland against South Africa, but that humiliating defeat at home for England yesterday. And apologies for getting it wrong.
Well, we don't blame you. What happened in the Premier League?
Well, we talk about big stories, don't we? And I'm pleased I've just spoken about that because it's a big story. Modern boots, as we used to call it in the tabloid days, coming from the pitch. And this is another one, another great story from the pitch, from the field of play. And rather than politics or anything else outside of football, Manchester City losing their 4th game in a row. For the first time, I think, since 2006, Pep Guardiola has managed 898 matches in his career since 2008 when he took over Barcelona in a bad state. He's never lost 4 in a row in normal time. That changed yesterday. They lost down at Brighton. They were leading until 13 minutes ago. They got a touch of the England rugby about them. But it's blown the title race right open because very cheekily afterwards, Pep Guardiola said, maybe after winning 6 titles, it's time to give somebody else a chance. And he has this habit as well. He's a very peculiar, complex kind of character. Once every couple of years, he'll confront a player on the opposite side and he'll have a confrontation with them for various different reasons. Now, he went up to the Brighton defender, Paul van Hekke, yesterday, who had marked his own striker, Erling Haaland, very effectively. Not an easy thing to do, although Haaland did actually open the scoring. And he said, look, if you're going to go up against Erling all game, fall down together, rise up together, don't play action, don't go to the grass. But that was sour grapes. Van Hekke was fantastic all afternoon. I don't think he liked it. Liverpool with a big winners yesterday, beating Aston Villa by 2 goals. That means they go 5 points ahead. Nottingham Forest still in 3rd without even playing. They're in action today against Newcastle. Anne's favourites, Bournemouth, gallantly going down to defeat at Brentford by 3 goals to 2.
Oh, dear.
And it's over to Arsenal today. We talk about this word psychology in sport, don't we? Big opportunity for them now. The gates open slightly, despite their problems in recent weeks. They travel to Stamford Bridge in a 4:30 kick-off. We don't know if Cole Palmer's going to play for Chelsea. That's a big thing because he's an outstanding player for them. We think Odegaard's going to start for Arsenal. If they don't take advantage today, it's game over for them because you can't keep allowing your rivals to slip up and not take advantage. That's the essence of sport.
Right.
There you go.
That's it. Yeah.
The essence of sport.
What was the aftershave that used to be the essence of man?
Oh, I don't know.
It's not brute, was it?
It might have been.
Brute. The essence of... Really? That's awful.
It might have been. I used to like Brute.
Yeah.
It was you could either buy...
Everybody liked Brute. I mean, it was just one of those ones that everybody was wearing.
No, it's all you could have was Brute or Old Spice. That was it.
Yeah.
Lynx was like... It wasn't effective. I still used to go home with B.O., you know.
Oh, disgusting. I've got one word for you. You stink.
That's 2.
Look, thank you. Ada, we'll see you later. We've got the papers heading away in just a moment.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment. This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark Meets at My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
The number of pubs may reach critically low levels.
Absolutely. So what we're seeing is a decline in the number of pubs in Britain, and it's fallen. This is an absolutely astonishing figure. So it's basically fallen 10% in a decade. So you know, do our math. It doesn't take very long for that to happen. So if that carries on, we'd have, get this, only 1,000 pubs by 2074. So the big question is, what will become extinct first? The bank branch on your high street, or the pub on your street corner? And this is a kind of perfect storm for landlords and landladies of, you know, the cost of labour. We saw, I mean, remember when the energy prices were at the high, we just realised just how much energy it keeps to keep the lights on in the local boozer. Yeah. As well as, you know, as the cost of the golden nectar itself. So, as they call it in Australia.
Well, talking about that, I was mentioning the other day to, was it my father-in-law? I said, I used to, when I first started going to the pub, I was 15,
Okay.
Half
a lemonade, half a shandy.
I was nearly 16, I got half a shandy. No, we used to have Monday Club, where pints of Foster's was £1.50. And my father-in-law was saying, I went to London the other day, a pint was £8.
Yeah.
Can you believe it?
Yeah.
And when you've got those kind of prices, why wouldn't you just go down the supermarket and get 16 tinnies for £5?
So you're going all Aussie now. Put the tinnies in the esky before you have the bar bit.
Good day, mate. Why not?
I agree, actually. I think it's concerning. A lot of people look at the high streets and they're very concerned that it's looking quite glum, to be honest. You know, lots of things are closing. But the reality is it's because people are not buying from the high street. They're not going to the pub, you know. People are just deciding, you know, what they're going to do in their spare time. Are they really going to go to the pub, or are they going to potentially go to, you know, David Lloyd or a Nuffield, you know, join a gym membership? They're just looking at their expenses and just deciding, you know what, we're going to actually cut costs, you know.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Right, let's have a look through the papers this morning with social campaigner Winston Davis and political commentator Lynn May. Good to see you both this morning. Lynn, this is fascinating. In the Sunday Times, William, Prince of Wales, wants to be royal with a small r. What does that mean?
Yeah, I think he's realised that potentially moving forward, the taste and the appetite for the royal family is waning slightly. And I think we saw this, especially when they went on their Caribbean tour, and they were not welcomed in the way that they thought they had, and they were slightly out of touch. They were in this Range Rover, wearing white, topless, and a lot of backlash was like, you know, this is a throwback to colonialism, especially with the call for reparations. So I think what he's saying is, let's try and be the royal family of a small r, so they don't seem like they're over, you know, inserting themselves as the huge royal family, because quite frankly, people are getting a bit tired of it, the younger generation anyway.
Yeah, interesting. Winston?
Yeah, listen, I like the fact that I've never a massive understanding of the point of the royal family, apart from it being bringing a brand to the country and our economy. But the fact of him having this astuteness to say, do you know, actually, as times change, maybe we change the optics of how we are. And he talks about, you know, he wants to put impact, philanthropy and collaboration at the front of what they do. And I'm like, OK, well, if you're changing that and you're using that brand for the betterment of us as a nation, do you know what? Fantastic, brilliant.
It is a bit of a shame, though.
Well, but if they're going to use the brand to do certain things, which I totally support him in doing, your brand has got to be a big deal. So why play it down? Actually, he should be royal with a capital R.
And I think this is it kind of spells the beginning of the end, that they're conceding, aren't they? Like we're not big how we used to be.
I don't agree with you on that.
Do you not think?
I don't agree. No,
do you
I
think
don't
this
think
is
it's
all a bit of clever
they've got to evolve. Of course, they've got to evolve, and he'll evolve it even more when he's king. But the beginning of the end, no.
No.
No, yeah, maybe it really got to them, that Caribbean tour. I think it must have been very difficult for them. But, you know, look at the impact that the King and Queen had in Australia, where all the media was saying, oh, there's such a, you know, anti-republic or a Republican spirit and everything. But actually, the Australians turned out in thousands. And they must have felt very good, well, apparently they did. They felt very good about the way they went down in Australia. So.
Well, I'm with you. I wish they would have big R if they're going to keep that, especially as they've been a bit scarce on the ground recently.
I think William's wrong. I think they need to be a big R, not a small R.
All right. In the Sunday Times, Winston, talk about what the impact of the budget and you know, things like employers' national insurance. And most of us sort of say, well, you know, it doesn't apply to us directly, does it? We'll see the consequences. However, you look at a company, the Sunday Times says, like Tesco, and actually the impact on them is going to be a £1 billion increase in their costs. Well, we're going to see that on the supermarket shelves, aren't we?
Yeah, so they were talking about it, saying it's $1 billion over the 4 years, so it's $250 million a year. I mean, you've got to put it in context. Their annual profits are $2.9 billion a year, so it's, you know, it's a still sizable amount in comparison, 8%, 7%, or something like that. And they're also saying that if they can't pass that on, that they're going to have to look at investment and cutting costs or cutting hours of staff. So it's like they're in a really strong position. So you can't really dictate to them. There are food suppliers. Our main food suppliers across the country, you know, main supermarkets, you've got Asda involved, Sainsbury's involved. You know, these are the big powerhouses. But I'm not a Labour supporter, but I have been, you know, questioning what's been going on since. And I know they've got to get this money from somewhere, but I wish that maybe they communicate what's the benefit of you know, these tax changes they're putting in place.
Yeah, I think, you know, get out the violin when it comes to people like Tesco, big corps like that. I understand they employ thousands, if not millions, and I understand that, you know, they have that level of power. But my heart goes out more to the smaller businesses and these tax hikes. Well, yeah, if anyone can afford it, it's kind of... when we look at even during COVID or during any hard times, they hardly feel it, do they? As you said, the profits. This is not, you know, this is net profits. Yeah, after overheads, it's 2.9 million.
Which is fine, and I totally get what you're saying. However, nevertheless, no company, however big or small, wants to see their profits eaten into by best part of 10%, which means that it will mean higher prices for all of us, or fewer people being employed. So real people will feel the pain of this.
But that's only because they want to protect their profits.
But who doesn't?
Well,
why wouldn't you want to protect your profits?
Big conglomerates and corps should be able to say, do you know what, we've gone through a turbulent time, we are the ones that have probably profited the most.
So we'll just have fewer profits then?
Well, at the end of the day, who helps with their profits? The people, the staff, and they're going to cut their staff.
None of us as individuals would do that. None of us would say, oh, well, it's all very tough and we don't want our company to go on. Therefore, let's sacrifice a lot of our salary.
That's because we're small companies. You and I would probably have smaller companies. We're not going to have huge corps like Tesco. Nothing seems to affect them when it comes to profit. Have you ever heard of them saying, we've had a huge dip in our profits? It just hasn't happened.
Because they're so powerful.
I think they should take a hit.
Oh, I don't. I don't. Right, look, we're out of time. We're out of time. Here's the weather.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. After a cloudy start for many of us this morning, there is some brightness on the way as we head into the new working week with some sunshine on offer for most of us. However, back to this morning, and it's quite a grey and cloudy start as it has been over recent weeks, particularly across the northern half of the UK. Quite a damp start too. An area of rain pushes its way eastwards as we go through this morning. There will be some brighter spells across the southern half of the UK. These few and far between though, and generally a cloudy end to the afternoon. And temperatures a little bit above what we saw yesterday, still a little bit above average for the time of year, maybe 14 or 15 degrees in the south. As we go through the rest of today, that rain band continues to push its way eastwards across parts of Scotland. So for the majority of Scotland, it will be a drier end to the day and quite a clear end to the day as well. Those clear spells persisting for many. 1 or 2 isolated showers across the very far north, these perhaps turning heavy at times. And for Northern Ireland too, generally a dry and clear end to the day. Northern England, parts of Wales, the Midlands see that cloud and mist and murk continuing with outbreaks of rain slowly spreading their way southwards overnight. And the southern half of the UK generally staying a little bit dry with 1 or 2 clear spells, but turning cloudier as we go into the early hours of Sunday morning as that frontal system continues to sink its way southwards. Those showers do continue for northern parts of Scotland, turning quite blustery at times, but generally plenty of clear spells for much of the northern half of the UK. And under those clear spells could be turning quite chilly with a patch of frost possible in places. Generally just staying a little bit milder further south though, particularly under all that cloud. As we go into Monday morning, that rain band across the very far south lingers for a time across the south coast, but eventually clears its way southwards, leaving a dry and bright day for much of the UK. Plenty of sunshine and blue skies on offer, which will be a welcome change from what we've seen over recent weeks. And temperatures still a little bit above average for the time of year, maybe 13 or 14 in the south and 10 to 12 further north, but feeling pleasant in that sunshine.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook for the rest of the day. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
There's only 2 weeks remaining to win Christmas on Us this year. There's £20,025 in tax-free cash. There's £5,000 to spend on gifts for all the family. There's £500 to spend in your favourite supermarket. And a festively themed GB News goodie bag. We'll get it all to you in time for the big day. For another chance to win, call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232.
Community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
this is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment. This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory. Don't miss my big opinion. Mark meets at my take at 10. Democracy is a funny old thing. And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it. Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it. That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
He'll be 14 next week.
Well, a very good morning to you. It is Remembrance Sunday, and today we're going to talk to an incredible lady, a 100-year-old lady, giving her take on what she remembers from all those years ago.
Yeah, she's Dorothy Barron, and we'll be meeting her just a bit later. At 11 o'clock this morning, of course, the King will be leading the entire nation through the 2-minute silence at the Cenotaph, remembering everyone who served our country. And there, the Princess of Wales was at the Royal Albert Hall last night in her first sort of major appearance in recent times. And she looked wonderful, I have to say. She was glowing, and Prince William was at her side. And it was lovely to see them out. The King was there, of course, accompanied last night by Princess Anne, because Queen Camilla couldn't be with him. She's got this chest infection. And actually, the Buckingham Palace said it was mostly to protect others. And you think, oh, the King particularly, and Kate, it was mostly to protect others. She herself is okay. She's just got the remnants of a chest infection now. But it was lovely to see Kate there last night.
It certainly was. Also today, it's a clean sweep for Trump. He wins the state of Arizona. That means he's taken all 7 swing states in the US election.
And we've been asking you, did the Queen disapprove of Boris Johnson? Because that's the rumour, as a new book claims that Britain's longest reigning monarch had little time for the controversial former Prime Minister.
Good morning. England rugby captain Jamie George called his side's performance unforgivable as the Three Lions suffered a humiliating defeat at the hands of Australia at Twickenham. And in the Premier League title race, it takes another twist as Liverpool move 5 points clear at the top.
It's been a cloudy start for many of us today, but there is some sunshine on the way into the new working week. Join me later for the full forecast with all the details.
It's just gone 7 o'clock. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Anne Diamond, and this is GB News Breakfast.
Loads of you getting in touch on that Tesco story.
Yes, only because a lot of people are agreeing with you.
Yeah, well, look, some people, David says Tesco greedy as it is. Someone else says Tesco lost $6 billion a few years ago, so it's not all gravy. The whole point with it is, as it will affect us as ordinary people, but if you want the economy to grow, which is what we really need in this country to get more money in, then you need companies, big and small, to be doing well. Otherwise, the economy isn't going to grow.
Yeah, but they're making an awful huge profit at the moment.
Yeah.
They could afford to take a little bit of a hit rather than do the inevitable, which is, as you said, put the prices up. They don't have to hit us, the consumer. How about looking after us and taking the hit themselves for at least maybe once?
But it's not a little. It's like you're talking 10% of profits.
But the profits are huge.
Well, even so, but you wouldn't expect anybody else to do that, would you?
No,
and you need the economy to grow.
I've been reading about your friend, Queen Camilla.
Oh, my friend, yeah.
She's obviously can't be at the Cenotaph either today because of this chest infection, which is a shame because we'll miss her. She's always usually by the King's side. But she will be in the limelight quite soon because ITV have made a documentary called Her Majesty the Queen Behind Closed Doors. And in it, they clearly, it's very pro-Camilla. Which I know a lot of people may not like, because she's still a very controversial figure to a great many people watching. But there's the charities that she does support say she is really cool. She's very, very good. She only embraces charities that are very close to her heart: osteoporosis, diabetes, and there's this one charity that said that it involves. It's called Rape Crisis South London, and they help with women who have been raped. And they, 15 years ago, approached 100 high-profile women, actresses, pop stars, senior lawyers, trying to get them involved in the charity, and they never had one bite back.
No.
Until they wrote to the then Duchess of Cornwall. And she wrote back straight away. Her office replied that she was really interested, but before she would say yes, could she come and meet them and get to know them? And she did just that. And they said she was a knockout, and she now has a very strong relationship with that particular charity. And all of the charities apparently are saying that lots of people never really showed interest in our cause. They weren't interested in reading, in libraries, in all the rest of it. She's got this book club and everything, hasn't she? And the Queen's Reading Room, until she stepped in and became patron or whatever, and they said, and her effect has been astonishing. So isn't that lovely?
So the time I met her was for a charity. It's actually JDRF UK, which has now changed to Type 1 Breakthrough UK, it's called now. They've had a rebrand, and she's patron of that. And I have to say, she was phenomenal, and she knew her stuff on what is actually quite a complex medical issue. She knew her stuff, and she was delightful and really impressive. I was blown away by her.
This one charity said, she's not doing it. She's not doing it for good press. It's because she really cares about survivors of domestic and social sexual violence. They said, in many ways, she's a relatively normal person. She wasn't brought up in palaces. She's taken the children to school and she's done the shopping on the way home. But she happened to end up queen. I think that's freed her. She's not worrying about her image or whether this is the right thing for a queen to be doing. She just gets on with the job.
I think we need to have a lot of respect for her. Really do. And I hope she feels better soon.
Yeah.
Now, it is one of the most solemn days of the year, Remembrance Sunday, and across today and tomorrow, millions will pause to reflect on the sacrifices of our veterans.
The King and other members of the royal family and government will gather at the Cenotaph to remember all those who have died in the line of duty.
Last night, of course, the royal family joined together, without the Queen, as we know, at the Royal Albert Hall for the Festival of Remembrance.
And it also marked, as we can see there, the Princess of Wales's return to official duties, William always by her side.
Well, we talk about people who've served, and it's always fascinating when you meet someone of an age. So we've met a 100-year-old veteran, remarkable lady, sharing memories that bring a tear to her eye, we're told, this Remembrance Sunday.
She's Dorothy Brown, and she served as a visual signaller in the Women's Royal Naval Service during the Second World War. Will Hollis went to visit her at her home in Hertfordshire.
I always want to cry in remembering my youthful friends who were killed during the war.
80 years have passed since Dorothea Barron served to protect her country. In 1943, aged 18, she joined the Women's Royal Naval Service and, as a visual signaller, trained the men heading to Normandy.
I feel very proud that I did my bit for my country.
Stationed in Scotland, she kept her role a secret.
You never talked about your job to anybody, so you didn't know what the sailor who was sitting beside you in the train did.
Now, living in Hertfordshire, she's sharing her story with the world. Reaching her 100th birthday, the centenarian celebrated with a trip in a Spitfire, plus a party organised by her daughter Katie. And a very special card.
This brings our warmest congratulations and heartfelt good wishes on such a special occasion. Wow. And it's signed Charles R. and Camilla R. And your name's at the bottom of the card. I have huge respect and admiration for her. My breath is taken away by the fact that she has reached 100. That is no mean achievement.
Despite her age, Dorothea says yoga keeps her body young. And her memories of Britain at war are as vivid today as the moment they were made.
I can still remember London burning when they concentrated one day and night on London, and it was a mass of flames.
Some memories are easier to carry than others.
Our youth was taken away. There were no teenagers. You had dances, but you were dancing in uniform.
As the country pauses this Remembrance Sunday, Dorothea will too.
I feel very proud that we're still remembering those people who gave their youth for their country. And they were doing it for their country.
Will Hollis, GB News, Hertfordshire.
What an amazing lady. I was proud to do my bit for my country. I mean, that's a lesson to us all. Anyway, Dorothea will be here in the studio, actually, talking to Michael Portillo from 10 o'clock this morning.
And that's our special coverage from 10 o'clock of everything that will be happening in Whitehall and around the Cenotaph. Now, as you know, we love to hear what you think with our daily poll. And today we're asking, and already you've been getting in touch with your views, are we doing enough, for instance, in schools, to make sure that children understand what our veterans did and the sacrifices of those who died and what today is all about? We'll be bringing you the live results throughout the day, so make sure to stay tuned. Final result will be announced later in Nana Akwia's show.
If you want to take part, you just need to get online, go to gbnews.com/poll.
Now, here's something that's proving to raise a few eyebrows. The late Queen's final thoughts on Boris Johnson have been unveiled, if you like, by the author Tim Shipman today. He's serialised his latest book, it's called No Way Out, in the Sunday Times.
Well, shining a bit of a light on the behind-the-scenes drama of what went on with Boris Johnson as he prorogued Parliament back in 2019. Royal courtiers apparently reveal that the Queen just wanted to hang on long enough to see Boris off the premises.
Are you comfortable hearing what the Queen's private thoughts were, now leaked to an author by royal courtiers who hide behind their anonymity? Not that I'm biased. Joining us now is the Deputy Editor of Spectator UK, Freddie Gray. I'm not very comfortable about it, and quite a few of our viewers aren't. But
well,
is this sort of
I'm much
bona
more of a grubby
fide?
person than you, so I quite like it. I'm afraid I quite like hearing the private thoughts of people. The problem with this story, though, is that it's not quite clear what she did actually think, because the Queen was very good at keeping that from the public and from the people even around her. So there is this quote at the end, which is in her final days, when the Queen found out that Boris Johnson had resigned. She's alleged to have said, well, at least I won't have that idiot organising my funeral now. It sounds slightly like third hand.
But this idea of thinking, well, she wanted to hang on long enough to see the back of him, well, that I find hard to believe. What I do find very likely is the idea that she wanted to hang on long enough to do her duty to welcome in the new Prime Minister.
Yes.
That sounds much more likely.
That's probably right. And it is quite... I mean, I know people don't tend to feel sorry for Boris Johnson, but it's quite sad for Boris Johnson, who was a big fan of the Queen.
Yes, and he understood that his final meetings with her were rather jolly. He really enjoyed them and said that she was on very good form and bantered with him.
And indeed, I think one of his best speeches was about Elizabeth the Great. He gave a very good speech. And, you know, say what you want about Boris, none of his successors could have given such a good speech.
I just think it just seemed a bit grubby to me, all of this.
What,
Freddie.
sort of digging around to find out?
Yes. And as you say, because it depends, you know, royal courtiers, but it depends which royal courtiers you speak to, of course.
Yeah, you admitted that earlier, didn't you?
Oh, totally does. And I think it tends to be, you know, there are people in the royal court, in the court, who tend to be very Remainy, probably more on the Charles side. Who talk to John Major and sort of arch Remainers like that. So they'll tell you that, oh, no, the Queen was absolutely appalled at Berwick Parliament. You know, she thought Boris Johnson was a terrible charlatan and all this stuff. And then you'll meet other people in royal circles who might think that the European Union's a bad thing. And they will say to you, oh, well, she'd give a knowing wink, or she would nod, approvingly. At Boris Johnson's antics to suspend Parliament and so on.
I mean, wasn't there a story just a short time ago saying, oh, she was quite anti-woke and all this sort of thing? So, I mean, it's like
she was a sane, sensible person. So of course she was. Yeah.
Well, yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
But the other story, the other sort of palace intrigue story is more of a Downing Street intrigue story, which is the row between Dominic Cummings and Carrie Johnson, and that's where Tim Shipman's book is really, really very interesting.
Oh, right.
I think.
See, I don't care about lifting the lid on that.
They didn't like each other at all, and in fact, the whole Partygate war was a sort of briefing war between Carrie, Boris's wife, and Dominic Cummings. And
but isn't that? I'll tell you what worries me about that, and I'm quite sure that's absolutely right. However, what worries me is that, you know, everything that goes on. It seems to be nothing to do with elected politicians, necessarily. We vote for them, they get in, and then it's all these people of, you know, and like your Sue Grays and all the rest of it, who seem to have all the levers of power.
Yeah, it's almost as if we live in a decadent country, isn't it?
Oh, careful, Freddie. Careful, Freddie.
Well, no, but I mean, Westminster is a very, very vile, toxic place. And the relationship between political insiders and the media is pretty disgusting.
And very prurient, I think. I just feel uncomfortable about going back on anything the Queen did, really, because now is not the time.
Right. Well, I mean, at some stage, we probably should know. I mean, it's historically interesting, isn't it?
Well, you were saying earlier, weren't you, that Tim Shipman is a very renowned author.
Yeah.
And doesn't print these things lightly.
No, well, he probably does print them lightly, but he does have very good sources, and you know, he is the go-to guy for this kind of information.
Yeah. What's your take on what we're seeing in the States, Freddie, with a clean sweep?
Well, I mean, it looked like Donald Trump was going to win Arizona. He has now won Arizona. I mean, I was in Florida last week. It was absolutely extraordinary. The victory itself is one of the most remarkable political comebacks of all time. People are saying it's bigger than Nixon's comeback in '68 in terms of where he came from. You know, if you go back to January 7th, 2021, and if you were to say to people Donald Trump will be re-elected in a near landslide, in 4 years' time, they'd have thought you were mad. But he is an extraordinary politician, and he has built this extraordinary political coalition. I think the thing that's probably being understated at the moment is the extent to which the Democrats have destroyed themselves.
Yeah.
And I spoke to some Democrats while I was there who really, even before the election, were saying we need to rethink who we are as a party, because we've effectively lied to the American people about Joe Biden's health for 4 years. And then we lied to them about what a brilliant politician Kamala Harris was, when everyone at the top of the party knew she was a bad candidate. They didn't really want her to begin with. And so it's a big moment of reckoning.
And they rolled out nearly every celebrity in the United States and have learned that sprinkling of fairy dust just didn't work.
But also, particularly as you could see the celebrities, you could see the despair in their eyes.
Yeah.
They were backing her, but they didn't. There was a great video of Ben Stiller saying why he was a feminist because of his daughter, and that's why he's... And he looked like he had a gun pointed to his head as he was saying it.
Well, OK. Freddie, thank you.
Great pleasure.
I'm sure Ben Stiller would possibly disagree with that, but you never know.
He would, but I pointed a gun into his head anyway.
Let's talk to lawyer and writer Carol Kilgore, who's here. What's your assessment of where we are politically? I mean, it's an interesting point, isn't it? Has this been, a bit like we've seen over here, a tremendous endorsement of Donald Trump or absolute despair of the Democrats?
Well, I think, certainly amongst Americans abroad, it's definitely a mixed bag. My American friends in Europe are pretty on the side of despair. But I know lots of people in the UK who are quite happy about the result. And as you pointed out, Freddie, I mean, the whole idea of sort of draining the swamp in Washington, D.C., it's a similar kind of thing to what you call the Westminster kind of bubble, because he ran on this platform of literally draining the swamp. So a lot of people in smaller towns in America, particularly manufacturing and industrial areas, are quite happy, I would think, because they're hoping that his tariffs, policies and anti-globalization will bring back jobs to their areas.
A lot of observers are saying the word "but" comes into people's responses when you ask them why they voted for Donald Trump. They said, I've been a Democrat all my life, but... Or they say, he's a hateful man, really don't like the man, but... And they've actually reasoned things through that even though they would maybe naturally not want to vote for him, clearly there was no alternative that was better.
That's right. I mean, I think, if you compare, for instance, the state of Nevada, which Bill Clinton actually took in his campaign, I mean, Trump actually did almost as well as Clinton did, and took all of the swing states, obviously. And I think part of it is, as you pointed out, the reasoning of people. They feel that the Democrats have left them behind, that their policies are only for the elites. It's similar to, I think, what people thought about the Conservatives and the reason the Conservative Party lost a lot of their working class support in the last election.
Is there going to be a challenge for Trump now? I mean, he's got this huge mandate and he's going to be able to get a lot done now that he's got the houses as well. However... the concept, like the draining the swamp context is altered now, isn't it? Because he's been there. He's ultimately, whether he likes it or not, become part of the swamp.
I think you're right, but the counter-argument to that is that the people that he's bringing in to do the work now are not established Washington bureaucrats. So part of that will be outsourcing a lot of the jobs from D.C. to other areas of the U.S. A lot of the civil service, those jobs will be moved out of D.C. and Virginia and Bethesda. And also that he's hiring in people like Howard Lutnick, Tulsi Gabbard, Elon Musk. Tulsi Gabbard is obviously still a politician, but some of these big names in business, in the business community, that will have very different kind of ideas about approaching policy. And then his other big promise, of course, is to send back the illegals. So there's something like 20 million illegals in the country, and that's one of his biggest priorities, is to deport them.
Well, if he manages to do that, then the people over here will be watching very closely as well. Carol, great to see you. Thank you very much indeed. And thank you, Freddie, as well.
Thank you. Well, what's the time? 21 minutes past 7 already. Let's have a look at some other stories coming into the newsroom this morning.
Well, some farmers are once again threatening to disrupt the food chain, withholding produce and livestock if the Treasury doesn't row back on those inheritance tax plans for family farms. Worth, well, it's about £1 million. Yesterday, the National Farmers Union's leader warned that government farmers will be militant if ministers don't start to listen.
17 people have been injured after 2 buses crashed into each other in Manchester on Saturday morning. It's been confirmed that no one's been seriously hurt, and the area, which is around Rochdale Road, has since now been reopened to the public.
George Clooney apparently planning to take a step back from American politics.
Well,
I mean, there you go.
He endorsed Kamala Harris, didn't he? Put his reputation on the line a bit.
Yeah, a few people are blaming him, all of this, because he sort of was one of the key forces between Joe Biden stepping back. But the idea of someone who's not actually involved in politics taking a step back from politics is remarkable.
It is. OK, shall we find out if the rumours about the weather are true? Because we are told the sun might actually come out in the next couple of days. So here's your weather forecast with Ellie Glazer.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. After a cloudy start for many of us this morning, there is some brightness on the way as we head into the new working week with some sunshine on offer for most of us. However, back to this morning, and it's quite a grey and cloudy start as it has been over recent weeks, particularly across the northern half of the UK. Quite a damp start too. An area of rain pushes its way eastwards as we go through this morning. There will be some brighter spells across the southern half of the UK, these few and far between though, and generally a cloudy end to the afternoon. And temperatures a little bit above what we saw yesterday, still a little bit above average for the time of year, maybe 14 or 15 degrees in the south. As we go through the rest of today, that rain band continues to push its way eastwards across parts of Scotland. So for the majority of Scotland, it will be a drier end to the day and quite a clear end to the day as well. Those clear spells persisting for many. 1 or 2 isolated showers across the very far north, these perhaps turning heavy at times. And for Northern Ireland too, generally a dry and clear end to the day. Northern England, parts of Wales, the Midlands, see that cloud and mist and murk continuing with outbreaks of rain slowly spreading their way southwards overnight. And the southern half of the UK generally staying a little bit dry with 1 or 2 clear spells, but turning cloudier as we go into the early hours of Sunday morning as that frontal system continues to sink its way southwards. Those showers do continue for northern parts of Scotland, turning quite blustery at times, but generally plenty of clear spells for much of the northern half of the UK. And under those clear spells could be turning quite chilly with a patch of frost possible in places. Generally just staying a little bit milder further south though, particularly under all that cloud. As we go into Monday morning, that rain band across the very far south lingers for a time across the south coast, but eventually clears its way southwards, leaving a dry and bright day for much of the UK. Plenty of sunshine and blue skies on offer, which will be a welcome change from what we've seen over recent weeks. And temperatures still a little bit above average for the time of year, maybe 13 or 14 in the south and 10 to 12 further north, but feeling pleasant in that sunshine.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Now, it's rolling on to Christmas, of course, now. How about the best Christmas present ever? A load of cash appearing magically in your bank account.
Yeah, that would be great. It's the great British giveaway. Here's how to take part.
We're giving you the chance to win everything you need to celebrate the festivities. There's £20,025 in tax-free cash. There's £5,000 to spend on gifts for all the family. There's £500 to spend in your favourite supermarket. Christmas lunch is on us. And a festively themed GB News goodie bag. We'll get it all to you in time for the big day. For another chance to win, call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Text cash to 63232. One entry cost.
Banter,
Yeah,
it
this
seems.
is a really big story and important. Pub landlords could have to become banter cops to stop themselves being sued by staff offended by comments from customers under workers' rights reform. So, Labour, when they were part of their election process, they were like, we're going to reform workers' rights, and that all sounds good on paper, but there were issues in terms of how might it affect employees and fear from employees costing them more money. One of these things that they're sort of pushing through, though, is that in the Equality Act of 2010, part of the issue was that if you were offended at work or someone said something sexist or racist, something that affected you, the employer had to take some sort of, they had three chances to kind of take action.
Yeah.
Now, the employer should have taken action already. So employees can sue employers. Now, this has a big impact on us because we're comics and we perform in venues. And if some of the bar staff hear a joke that they don't like, then they can sue their employer, potentially, under this legislation.
So it's not punters?
Well, also, it could be like you're at a bar and some bloke is like, oh, I like that top, or whatever. That's not good behaviour. But the point is now that employee could sue their employer.
So, because, I mean, the sort of scenario I was imagining was that a barmaid was being maybe sexually harassed or
That's
something.
what they're focusing in this article, but other articles have gone down the free speech route. Okay. And also venues and universities having lectures. We saw it at, in Edinburgh Fringe Festival and Sadowitz. He had a show cancelled not because of any punters, but because two of the 18-year-olds were working. They were upset by his
There was
wedding.
a bar in Brighton, wasn't there? There was a story we covered a few weeks ago. A bar in Brighton threw some people out because...
exactly. They had turfs on the...
turfs.
Yeah.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 7:30 now, of course. Today, many of us will be remembering people close to us or
family
people from our
members,
history, who served in, well, any war, any conflict. There are still about 20 Commonwealth servicemen whose remains are found every single year.
Isn't that amazing? And there are yet more who are never recovered or brought home.
Which is horrific, isn't it? Well, the Commonwealth War Graves Commission, all too aware of all of this, they commemorate almost 2 million men and women who died during the Second World War and others.
Well, joining us now is the Director General of the Commonwealth War Graves Commission, Claire Horton. A very good morning to you, Claire. And I know that whenever I've spoken to ex-servicemen, as I know Stephen will have as well, they all mention the wonderful work you do, and you do it all over the world, don't you?
We do. Good morning, Anne and Stephen. We do, and we are working in 153 countries, 23,000 sites across the globe in every continent except Antarctica. So yes, we commemorate almost 2 million men and women, and that's from the First and Second World Wars. And of course, we look after the graves of servicemen and women that died in conflict in other conflicts, and we still do that today, and we do that in the UK alone. We have 12,500 sites where we have servicemen and women buried that we will commemorate, or we will look after and care for their graves. So very busy, very large footprint, and particularly at this time of year, of course, as you can imagine.
An incredible task when you consider some of the sort of huge plots if you like. But you can go to tiny churchyards anywhere in the country, and there's a little plaque up saying, you know, this has got Commonwealth war graves on this site. So, I mean, really, you are right across the country.
Oh, we are indeed. And actually, we're very lucky because not only do we have the most incredible staff that help us, really, really strong horticulturalists and stonemasons who look after both those larger cemeteries, those plots, those memorials, but those individual plots too. But we also have a network of over 2,400 volunteers here in the UK who give up their time to keep those individual graves clean and tidy and smart. And what we found since we've had the signs outside all the churchyards is people are actively going in now, looking at these Commonwealth and war graves and starting to understand and research the people that are in those graves or that are commemorated. And that gives us a real opportunity to ensure that their memory will live on forevermore. And this is, of course, what the whole point of Remembrance is all about. It's how do you perpetuate the memory of people who gave their lives for all of our freedoms in conflict?
I mean, I hope that most adults understand the work you do and why it's so important and what it means to us as a country. Do you think enough young people do? And if you're worried about that, how can we engage them with those graves? It's a difficult concept, maybe, for some young people to grasp, but they should understand, shouldn't they?
Well, absolutely. And I think it's critical that young people today and in the future all grow up remembering that we all owe the freedoms that we have today. And we do enjoy extraordinary freedoms and generally a very good quality of life in this country and many other developed countries. We are all very much in the debt of those who gave their lives. And it is something that I think as we see those final veterans, and I was very honoured last night to attend the British Legion Festival of Remembrance, and you saw those last World War II veterans standing so proudly and telling their stories, and everyone was on their feet and everyone was applauding, because it is our duty to ensure that as they leave us, there's only us left, and we have to make sure that young people are educated and understand what happened in the past to give us that sort of freedom today. And so we spend a lot of time talking to schools. We work with colleagues in universities. We work with young people's groups, with different community groups, to really try and ensure that those messages and those stories are being passed on. And what we try to do is ensure that people think about it through perhaps their own family lens. So looking back through their own history, who did they potentially lose? Or if they didn't lose anyone, who in their family, and there will have been all the way back in everybody's family, because we were all affected in World Wars I and II particularly, who in our families fought and either died or came home, what are their stories? And most importantly, who were they? Because it's very easy to see lots of headstones and to think nothing of it if you're not understanding that they are real people. They're real stories. They had hopes and dreams like all of us, and they were taken away. But they were often done so willingly, and actually often people had to go to war. There was no choice, and so whole communities were decimated. And that's the history we're trying to get people to reconnect with, and to think very seriously about who in their family or who in their community they lost, and what's their story. And we actually have a way of communicating that and of telling those stories to a wider world. We have a platform called Forevermore, which we're encouraging people to put their stories onto. So obviously on the CWGC website, we're asking people to do that and upload the stories so that everybody can see who our heroes of yesteryear were, and of course our heroes of today, as we're still seeing people dying in conflict today. And then today I am also very privileged to be in Westminster Abbey, where we are we have what we call a torch of remembrance that we actually started in June this year with D-Day, and we followed through the whole 80th Liberation Campaign, a torch that has been passed on from veteran to cadet to young person, and we're doing that today in Westminster Abbey. And that torch, in front of 2,500 people, will be lit will be carried from a pensioner, a Chelsea pensioner, to a young cadet, and will be stood on the tomb of the unknown soldier to commemorate everyone's loss in conflict today and of yesterday.
It's fascinating that you have to approach this, and quite rightly, on so many different levels. What struck me as you were talking was the idea of the individual stories, and but it's how you balance it out, because there's something very beautiful about going to a small village churchyard and looking at an individual. And noting their name and their family and their age. And then you compare it to going to one of the big graves where, frankly, you are just lost for words at the sheer scale of what you see with the headstones. And it's finding that connection between those two extremes, isn't it?
It is, and I think not that many people are able to get out or perhaps do visit these very large war cemeteries. And of course, most closely to us, we have them here in the UK. We have a very large one in Brookwood in Surrey. We have very large ones in different parts of the country, including in Harrogate up north. So there's lots of cemeteries that you can see. But of course, France and Belgium, most closely to us, you will see Tyne-Cot with thousands upon thousands of graves, and of course, I think you mentioned, Dan, those who were never found. And in France alone, we have got at least 100,000 people still buried under the soils of France, and we are recovering them almost daily now, particularly as there are new big construction projects operating where bodies are being recovered, and we're often, not always, but we are often able to identify very long and painstaking archaeological and DNA processes involved where we can find that. But if we can identify family, then family can reconnect with long lost loved ones from maybe even 100 years ago that they didn't know they'd ever find. And for those, as well as those that remain unknown, they will all receive, as you see on your screens now, they will all receive full military honours burials and will be laid to rest among comrades. So the scale is incredible, and I absolutely urge schools and families, take your children to these places. They will be lost for words, and the names and epitaphs and the family stories, incredible.
How are you funded? I mean, are there ways that the public can properly support you in your work?
Yes, our core work is funded through 6 member governments. We are funded by the UK, Australia, New Zealand, India, Canada and South Africa. So that covers the core work. But of course, we struggle to stay with the size of the operation. We struggle to stay within the bounds of that funding. But our education work particularly, and this is the most critical piece, that engagement with people, the public, young people and future generations, that is all funded through donations through our charitable foundation, the Commonwealth War Graves Foundation. And that, if people can support us, can help us, or even become a member of the foundation, that is how we get our work continuing. This is how we perpetuate commemoration, and this is how we ensure that their names liveth forevermore. So any help people can give us, we would be very grateful.
Claire Horton, it's really good to talk to you this morning.
Yeah,
thank you.
Fantastic, thank you.
It's hugely upsetting. I mean, taking kids to the big war graves, war cemeteries, is very upsetting.
Yeah, but
they need to be upset
but as you
sometimes.
said, even the little, commemorative areas in little villages, and that's when you read the names and you find that, particularly in World War I, some families lost all their menfolk because the same name appears again and again. You could only imagine the impact on the village then. But they do a fabulous job. And most people who ever go to those graves, the first thing they come back and say to you is how well kept they are.
Oh, they are.
And that shows a respect.
The big war cemeteries are very well kept, with military precision. Right, coming up, we're going to be talking to Jack Carson, who's down at Horse Guards Parade, ahead of the service at 11 o'clock this morning.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Ed Barker, a talented saxophonist and clarinetist from London, has had a remarkable journey in the music industry marked by significant achievements and an unusual crossover into the political sphere, having honed his musical skills from a young age. He played in both the National Youth Orchestra and the National Youth Jazz Orchestra. In 2012, he became the solo saxophonist for pop legend George Michael. His reputation in music opened doors in politics, where he's worked with various leading Conservative members of Parliament and played a role in a number of major campaigns. To tell us more about the harmonious relationship between music and politics, I'm delighted to be joined by Ed Barker. This is quite puzzling, actually. How did a reputation in music get you into politics?
It's a good question. It's probably a question I'm still wrestling with at the age of 40. How's it happened? But somehow I've managed to do both, and I still enjoy doing them both at a high level. I think it's a simple thing of, when you're in politics, you're known as the saxophone guy, and when you're in the saxophone music industry world, you're known as the weird conservative political guy. And so it's just something people can remember you by, regardless of how good you are at either of those two things. I think it's just a device that people can kind of just latch onto to remember you.
But it's the word weird, because I imagine that most people in the music industry are probably somewhat to the left. Yeah. Certainly all the ones that I've met are. I mean, I can't imagine you and George Michael discussing Tory politics with approval, or maybe I'm wrong about that.
No, I don't tend to talk politics with people kind of when I'm not in politics somehow. And whenever there are political disagreements, people kind of, I think GB News actually gets closest to kind of embodying this spirit. People are very kind of up for learning from each other's kind of experiences and views and not biting each other's heads off.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Now, of course, it is Remembrance Sunday, which means the National Service of Remembrance will take place at the Cenotaph today.
Well, GB News reporter Jack Carson is in the heart of the action at Horse Guards Parade, which is where everybody's assembling to get ready for the big marches. So what's happening at your end then, Jack?
Well, good morning to you both. I mean, across Whitehall, 10,000 members of the public are expected to turn up for today's Remembrance Sunday service, and 10,000 people will also be taking part in the Royal British Legion's march past the Cenotaph. We're in Horse Guards Parade this morning, where they're all going to be lining up ready for that a little bit later on today, and we're joined this morning by Scott Robertson. Now, Scott, you were in the Royal Signals for 14 years. Who are you marching with today?
So today I'm going to be marching with the Afghanistan veterans community. Basically it's a community of soldiers, airmen, seamen, marines from all ranks who have all served in Afghanistan. It's a brand new community created by veterans for veterans.
And what does it mean to you to be part of this today and march past the Cenotaph and take that salute as well from the Prince of Wales?
I mean, I think the only words I can say are I'm honoured. I'm honoured to be representing everyone that's fallen. I'm honoured to be representing all the veterans out there, especially today, all the ones that served in Afghanistan. And I'm just blessed. I'm incredibly blessed to be here.
I mean, you were on 2 tours of Afghanistan. Tell us a little bit about your service out there.
Yeah, so I did my first tour of Afghanistan in 2011. It went by quite quickly. Not really much happening. I was up in Kabul. It was quite a safe tour. Second tour of Afghanistan in 2013. I was attached to Free Mercy and the Staffordshire Regiment on the front line.
And it's 10 years since the end of combat operations in Afghanistan this year. A lot of people like yourself, this year is quite poignant and quite personal for a lot of people this year, isn't it?
It really is. And it's especially poignant for me. It's 10 years since I left Afghanistan, and it was such an incredibly difficult tour, and I've struggled with it a lot since, and so it just makes it really special that this is 10 years and that we're remembering them.
And tell us a little bit about the help that you've received from the Royal British Legion, because you got that help after you left Afghanistan, and a big part of the Poppy Appeal this year is about supporting veterans with their mental health after combat operations. Tell us a little bit about the support that you received.
Yeah, so the Royal British Legion have been incredible. Since my medical discharge in 2019, they've been a great support, and I was able to access support through being a member of Team UK for the Invictus Games in Dusseldorf last year, and I've been selected for the Games in Vancouver in 2025 as well. And it's not just the Invictus Games. The Royal British Legion are always there, they're on hand to talk to me on the phone, via email. They do things like veterans courses at Lilleshall. They're just an incredible organisation, and then to allow me to be a part of this today as well, it's just amazing. But they've organised everything that's happening today, and they deserve a real round of applause, and they are amazing for veterans like me.
Right, Scott, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Thank you for your service as well. Good luck marching past the Cenotaph today. That's the view from Scott here. We'll be at Horse Guards today, all this morning as well, hearing from more veterans as they get ready to march past the Cenotaph.
OK, Jack, thanks very much indeed.
Yeah, that square will fill up pretty soon, won't it?
Certainly will.
And everyone's got a story.
Right, we've got the papers heading your way in just a moment.
I'm Patrick Christie's. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Apparently, in the Mail, page 5, hard-pressed bosses already having to deal with deadlines, red tape and staff who won't actually come into the office over Christmas. And they're saying that Christmas parties this year are going to be as lame as ever because everyone's afraid of basically getting cancelled or misbehaving or getting sacked for their behaviour. Would you risk it, Trey, at Christmas?
Do you know, I've actually never had a normal job in my life, so I wouldn't last a second because I'm not very politically correct. But it must be horrendous, really, because rather than enjoying yourself, you're having to completely always censor yourself. And it might be the most innocent of stuff that's said to someone that they then take offence to, which means you're going to probably just keep your mouth shut, which doesn't sound like the best of parties, does it, really?
No. Tricky one, isn't it? Because you're not at work, so it's not an office issue if, you know, some banter and it's taken the wrong way. But still, it's still a work environment, isn't it?
Yeah. If HR shows up, it's a work party. It's a work event.
HR shows up, I'm gone.
Yeah, well, that's what it is. And so even for us this year, first of all, it's the first year we're calling it a holiday party. I don't know how I felt about that.
Really? What, your company's doing that?
Yeah, they're calling it a holiday party.
Oh, no, well, no.
Yeah, I know. I voted against.
So they got rid of the word
Christmas.
Why?
Because we want to be inclusive.
How's it not inclusive to call it Christmas?
I know. Trust me.
Are you still going to go? I wouldn't bother going. I'd say no.
I am going to go, but I'm going to go dressed as Mrs. Claus, and it's going to be Christmassy, and I'm going to make sure that Christmas enters the door with me.
Yeah, you spread that Christian vibe.
100%. But outside of that, there is that element of HR showing up, and HR will be sober, and they've already prepped them to say, like, listen, this isn't your party. HR can have their party. This is your hangout.
Yeah.
Make sure everyone's being PC.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
7:51, papers now with social campaigner Winston Davis, political commentator Lynn May. Morning to you both.
Morning.
Sun on Sunday, Lynn says Angela Rayner wants a Council of the North.
Yes, so this is the idea that the northern regions don't get enough attention and we're all stuck in this Westminster bubble. So I actually agree. Very, very rarely do I agree with Angela Rayner, but I agree on this. When we look at the Levelling Up Fund under the Conservatives, the northern regions received 21 million less. And I think that's a lot to do with a lack of political presence, policy writing in those northern regions. And it's funny because in 1484, there was a sort of Council of the North, but it was done away with in the 1600s. So it'd be nice to see a bit more power, and it would empower the northern regions as well.
And it's not. And the thing is, this is like the North has been, vocal about wanting to have their say for a long time. A couple hundred years ago, we had the Peterloo massacre, where 60,000 people marched in Manchester, wanting more representation in Parliament. 8 of them were hacked to death. A couple of hundred of them were badly injured. And so people living in the North have wanted their say for a long time, and it's rightly so.
Where would it be based?
Maybe Manchester, Liverpool, I think. That's a good... I think Manchester has come on leaps and bounds, and I think it would be a good place to have more political influence.
Maybe someone like Leeds, because it's more in the middle.
Yeah, do you think?
Between the east and west.
Anywhere north of Watford is north, so...
See, that is typical London bubble thinking.
I know. Well, no, I like the sound of it. I want to see the details, so...
Yeah.
Winston, we're here on Remembrance Sunday. This is a very moot story in the Sunday People. Frontline to breadline.
Yeah, so we've got 68,000 former servicemen and women now on universal credit, which is a 66% increase since 2022. And for me, it's very telling. Like these people have served our country. They're left. They can't feed their families. They're twice as likely not to be able to go without food as people that have not served. And actually, it goes across our society. We've got 5 to 15% of all prisoners are ex-serving forces. They suffer from alcohol, mental health issues, PTSD. And the guy in this story, Wayne, he said that, after you've left the army, you're left to tend to your own wounds, and it's like cutting half of your heart away and your family are left to pick up the pieces. And it's like, how can they go and serve our country, fight, put their life on the line, and then just left as collateral damage?
Because people don't understand, and this means government doesn't understand how, especially if they've joined from a young age, how institutionalised they are.
But this is another thing is we're seeing, less and less people wanting to join the forces, and this is probably why, if we're seeing how they're being treated. Like Keir Starmer has come out and said, we're going to pledge 3.5 million. It's nothing. If we look at the amount that we're paying for hotels for migrants, it's a drop in the ocean. So why would anyone want to join the forces if they're not looked after the service?
And I think the point is as well that there's almost a good side to it in that they know where they are in the forces. They often enjoy their time in the forces. Obviously not if they're involved in terrible conflict or something. But the coming out of the forces, which is at least a structure into nowhere land, which is what it's like, is devastating to many.
They've got to be better supported. It's got, and the understanding of this PTSD. We've known about PTSD for a long, long time, 20, 30, 40 years. It's getting more and more prominence. It's like you can't just go, oh, mental health, ignore it. Oh, it's a fluffy word, ignore it. These people have seen people's heads chopped off and whatever else.
I think the problem is mental health as a term can be a bit fluffy for some people, but we're talking about military veterans where the suicide rates are ridiculously high.
And that's where mental health issues the word can genuinely be used, not just banded around.
And this statistic, though, that's included in the piece in the Sunday People, says that 68,000 military veterans are living on universal credit.
That's what I'm saying,
That's only a few thousand less than the total fighting in the Britain's army at the moment.
Yeah, 100%.
And we'll need to look at defence and our armed forces seriously now if Trump doesn't want to fund NATO anymore.
Well, they're talking about increasing the defence spending percentage, to impress Trump, I suppose. Yeah.
Well, 2.5%, but even that wouldn't be until 2030 at the earliest.
It's not enough.
But as you say, we've got to have. There is a military covenant but it's not enforced in the way it should be.
Yeah.
And these people need almost halfway houses when they leave the army or armed forces to actually get them properly integrated back into civilian life.
And as you made the point, we look after illegal migrants.
Yeah.
Better.
And we used to have key working housing, and we don't anymore.
No. Right, on that note, you two, we've got to leave it. Thank you very much
Thank
indeed.
you.
A little bit later on. And we're back at the top of the hour with all the headlines.
There's only 2 weeks remaining to win Christmas on Us this year. First, we'll give you £20,025 in tax-free cash. Then we'll give you £5,000 to spend on all of your Christmas presents, with a further £500 in vouchers to spend at your favourite supermarket. Finally, a GB News Christmas goodie bag. You'll get it all in time for the big day. For another chance to win, call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 632.
Are less attractive. And that affects them for the rest of their life. Now, where this does get interesting, and it is worrying because, of course, this is going to lead to the ugly rights movement, ugly pride march down some dirty back street. And but I remember hearing about this at the time. People born in the UK between March 3rd and March 9th, 1958, were part of this massive survey that was done, which was finding about what would happen to them later in life, and it went through a number of different factors. But I didn't know this. The teachers were also asked to rate their pupils on attractiveness.
Yeah, it's a bit pedo-y.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know whether that would wash now, but it was bone structure and where they're symmetrical, that kind of thing.
You should probably really have a committee of at least half a dozen teachers. Take a sort of standardised view across that. You might get a different point of view from the biology teacher, from the Latin master.
You suggest this to a school, and then we can see if we get it going.
It's interesting, though. I don't know whether you're aware of this, but generally speaking, it is understood within sort of psychological, psychometrics and so on, that IQ is the thing that most closely maps your outcomes, generally speaking. But the idea of beauty is the one that isn't discussed. And there is genuinely a theory that this is actually the great determinant of your life chances.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good morning to you. It's Remembrance Sunday, and today we pay tribute to those who sacrificed their lives for our freedom.
Well, events began last night with the royal family leading the nation at the Royal British Legion's Festival of Remembrance.
At 11 this morning, the King will guide the nation through 2 minutes of silence, remembering all of those who serve our country.
The Princess of Wales delighted everyone as she returned to official duties at last night's service. William, of course, by her side.
Also today, we speak to the incredible 100-year-old lady whose service to the country during the war will not be forgotten.
Trump's clean sweep. The comeback king wins the state of Arizona, meaning that he has now won all 7 swing states.
Here's one that's troubling us all this morning. Did the late Queen disapprove of Boris Johnson? It's the rumour in a new book which says the Queen had little time for the controversial Prime Minister. Should we really know these details?
The inquest is underway as England suffer yet another late defeat against old rivals Australia in a thrilling autumn international at Twickenham. And in the Premier League, Pep Guardiola suffers a 4th successive defeat for the first time in his managerial career as Manchester City are beaten again, this time at Brighton.
It's been a cloudy start for many of us today, but there is some sunshine on the way into the new working week. Join me later for the full forecast with all the details.
It's just gone 8 o'clock. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Anne Diamond, and this is GB News Breakfast.
Oh, Jay's been in touch, says morning. We're in Plymouth with a family involved in the military and ex-military. One niece working for a homelessness charity. We all agree that housing veterans should come before migrants, but in this country, nobody cares.
No, but that's why we've got to change the mood set, haven't we? The mindset towards our veterans. And actually, I think, towards our armed forces at the moment as well. Not only should we be proud of those serving at the moment, But we should also be incredibly proud and much more proactive in helping people who then come out of the army or the armed forces or whatever and find it very difficult readjusting.
It is, yeah, and it's difficult to readjust even if you've not been in conflict, because you are very institutionalised. I mean, it's a very controlled environment, of course it is. And especially if they join at a very young age...
Yes, then you've known little else.
No, and coming out into Civvy Street afterwards can be really, really tough. And we've got to help these people. They are... Even when they haven't been in conflict, they've still been prepared to put their lives on the line for us. We've got to reflect that in how we treat people as they come out of the armed forces.
We've got to do a change in mindset. You know, in America, they have a very different attitude.
Oh, it's totally
towards their serving forces, and also particularly to their veterans.
Things are slightly better. We've got veterans cards now, veterans badges, so it sort of acknowledges people. I mean, it's a token in that sense, but in some respects, even just that acknowledgement that you are a veteran, I think makes a big difference. But for those who are really struggling, and the suicide rates are very high, there needs to be proper support. A lot of charities do it. Combat Stress, Head Up. There's all these charities out there, and they do fantastic work. Should we be entirely reliant on charity?
No, and the trouble is that some of them do such a great job that maybe governments can afford to be complacent and say, well, this is a matter for the charities, but it isn't. More money is needed than that. On the subject of the Queen, the rumours about what the Queen allegedly said about Boris Johnson, it's the subject of this book that is today being serialised in the Sunday Times that sort of tells us what the Queen is alleged to have said, about her private thoughts about Boris Johnson. And the one particular comment that has offended a lot of people, and I don't think you and I are very happy about it, is that she allegedly said when he was deposed as Prime Minister, she said, well, thank goodness that idiot won't be the one who will be planning my funeral. And a lot of you have got in touch and pointed out that he wouldn't have been in charge of her funeral. That's why it doesn't sound as though she would ever have said something like that.
No.
Because her funeral was planned years ago, and she was part of the planning process.
Yeah, London Bridge, Operation London Bridge was done...
so it's not something she would have said, because it wouldn't have been on the agenda in any way.
I mean, the operation for Charles's funeral is planned now, and probably for William as well. I mean, it's just the way these things go.
Yeah.
Also, we were talking about a Council of the North, which Angela Rayner is apparently planning. Not necessarily. I mean, no, it depends what the details are and what it were. But on principle, not a bad idea. KG in Cumbria, you see, this is where it all gets controversial, has said Manchester, Liverpool and Leeds are in the Midlands. No, they're not. I know if you're from Cumbria, you tend to think that everyone else is.
Yeah.
But no, they're not.
So where does the North start and end?
And Sandra said Leeds is not in the Midlands, it's in the North. Quite right. I mean, if you live in Leeds this morning, you are a northerner.
And Mike says, we don't want any centre of power in the North. Leave us alone. What we want is a Trump-like wall around Yorkshire.
Oh, well, fair enough. Fair enough to you. But there you go.
Well, let Angela Rayner take that one on.
Yeah, dear me. Right, let's move on to what is happening today, because it is, of course, one of the most solemn days of the year, Remembrance Sunday. And so today and tomorrow, Armistice Day, millions will pause to reflect on the sacrifices of our veterans.
The King and other members of the royal family and government will gather at the Cenotaph to remember all of those who died in the line of duty.
Well, last night, the royal family joined together without the Queen, who's a little bit unwell, but they gathered at the Royal Albert Hall for the Festival of Remembrance.
Yeah, there's Princess Anne with the King instead of the Queen being by his side. And, of course, it also marked the Princess of Wales's return to official duties with William by her side.
Well, let's talk to our reporter, Jack Carson, who's at Horse Guards Parade in Whitehall, where everyone is preparing for the big event. Morning, Jack.
Yeah, preparations well underway here at Horse Guards. 10,000 members of the public are going to be gathered on Whitehall trying to get a glimpse of the Remembrance Sunday service. And here at Horse Guards, this is where 10,000 people are going to be lining up for the Royal British Legion's march past the Cenotaph. And let's speak to two veterans who are both going to be marching there and in that march past the Cenotaph today. Mel and Tracy, father and daughter, thank you so much for for joining us here this morning. Mel, I'm going to come to Tracy. Sorry, I'll come to you first. How much does this mean for you today to be able to march past the Cenotaph and be part of this parade that we're going to see?
It's a huge thing, and the emotion that you feel, remembering people who have gone before you, friends who are struggling now as a result of their experiences, and the women who have potentially broken all of those barriers. For me, as a female member of the Royal Air Force, the women who were in the Second World War, the First World War, they broke down all kinds of barriers, and so it's for me, it's remembering those, as well as friends, colleagues and members of our family.
Because you're chair of the Women's Royal Air Force Association, so you're actually going to be laying the wreath. I mean, how are you feeling? How do you think you're going to feel when you lay that wreath, knowing, as you've just talked about there, who you're representing?
It's always extremely emotional, and as I hand that wreath over, I always get a lump in my throat, thinking of all of those ladies, the ones that we are representing. So yeah, it's very emotional.
I mean, Mel, thank you as well for joining us this morning. I mean, tell us a little bit about what this means for you today, given your service.
Exactly as Tracy says. Obviously, my time was a long time before Tracy's, but I was in the Far East in the 60s. A lot of friends in the Malay Peninsula. Then in the 70s, when I had Northern Ireland, there was friends there, and then again in the Falklands in the 80s. So 60s, 70s, and 80s, a lot of people. And at times like this, they're always brought to mind, but again, the fact that we're allowed to be here is a great honour, a great privilege. So I'm very grateful to be able to do that and show our respects and remember the people that have given their lives for.
I mean, you spent 25 years in the Royal Corps of Signals. I mean, in Northern Ireland as well. Tell us a bit about your experience there.
Well, when I went to Northern Ireland, I was what they call the regimental signals officer. I was with the regiment who went with it was an infantry role, responsible for communications in the Maze prison, Lurgan, Portadown. Again, it was a very tense time, and to be quite honest, I felt I enjoyed it because I was doing the job for real, rather than running around on the plains of Dartmoor or northern Germany. It was the real so it was an amazing experience, and again, as I say, unfortunately, friends of mine did get killed. Yeah.
Does that must mean a lot then to remember those people today, those close friends that you lost?
Absolutely, yes, and they're never forgotten. But a day like this for everybody, I think it brings it right to the forefront, to the front of your mind, and you can't help but get emotional. Yeah.
Well, Mel, Tracy, thank you so much for joining us. I'm afraid we've run out of time, but thank you so much for joining us this morning. I know Tracy also served in Afghanistan, and of course this year particularly poignant for a lot of people, but personal because it is 10 years since the end of combat operations in Afghanistan as well. But Mel and Tracy, they're just two of the 10,000 that will be taking part in the Royal British Legion's march past the Cenotaph a little bit later today.
Have absolutely back-to-back coverage, Jack. Thanks very much indeed.
And it's always wonderful to watch, isn't it?
Oh, it's an amazing thing, something we should be very proud of. Right, now, this is an interesting one. The late Queen's thoughts on Boris Johnson have been teased by the author Tim Shipman, who's releasing his book No Way Out.
Yeah, and look at the size of it in the Sunday Times today. It's the start of the
bigger than you, Anne.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it says things that we're a bit uncomfortable about. He's saying the Queen wanted to hang on long enough to see Boris off the premises. But is it disrespectful, do you think, to speak about her, about what she's alleged to have said? This is what many of you are saying this morning, that it's just not on.
Yeah, well, look, I have to say we tend to agree. Let's talk to the former mayor of Middlesbrough, Andy Preston. Morning to you, Andy. I mean, apart from that, it's a bit of a headache and a bit embarrassing for Boris Johnson. Do we think it's actually true?
There'll be some truth in this, right? But is it 90%? Is it 75%? Is it 50%? I don't know. I'm inclined to think that the quotes attributed to the Queen are probably true, but we don't know the context. I mean, at one point, I think she may have said something to the effect of, he's more suited to the stage. But does that mean someone's a liar, or does it mean someone's a bit of a drama queen or a bit of a performer, which politics is all about? I don't know.
And also, we don't know if she had a twinkle in her eye when she said it.
Absolutely. She did do that sort of thing.
That's exactly.
Because she is alleged to have said that that she was very glad to have hung on long enough to see him out of office. She said, because I wouldn't want that idiot planning my funeral. Which isn't something I can hear her saying, except maybe with a silly twinkle in her eye, you know, that she knew she was being ironic and a bit funny.
Absolutely. It's very interesting. When I look at... I mean, Tim Shipman is a serious journalist and writer, and he wouldn't write anything that he didn't feel he could genuinely justify. But Dominic Cummings has been the big driver of a lot of this, or most of it, the genesis. And I wouldn't trust him. I think he's universally disliked. Boris Johnson, interestingly, despite what people think, if you and I were to walk down a high street, people would be coming out and shaking his hand, asking for selfies. He remains very popular. He divides opinion, but he remains very popular.
Yeah. He himself has spoken about his final few meetings with the Queen, and he clearly thought that they got on extremely well, and they had a little bit of a banter, and that, you know, it was a relationship that he really, really valued. He will be desperately hurt when he reads that and thinks it might be true.
Yeah, I would think so. And it's very difficult for us to know, and anyone reading to know how much truth is in this. But what we do know is it's spicy, it's salacious, it gets clicks, so it's a brilliant piece of journalism. Would I put much store by it? I don't think so, I'm afraid.
No, it's a tricky one, isn't it? Andy, thanks very much indeed. Well, look, someone who is we know, a very big fan of the Royals. Whether that's reciprocated or not, I don't know, is Donald Trump, who will be 47th President of the United States. Spokesperson for Republicans Overseas UK, Jennifer Ewing, is here. Lovely to see you, Jennifer. I last saw you in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
You've had chance to recover, to reflect, and now with the news that actually Trump has taken all swing states, all of those 7 swing states. This really is a remarkable situation that America's facing now.
It is, and I think on the night, Stephen, you and I spoke about, obviously I wanted Trump to win, but if Kamala was to win, I wanted it to be by a landslide. So there was a clear mandate, and that is what we have right now. Yes, you mentioned the swing states. Also, he won the popular vote, which is something that...
Well, very few were expecting that.
Well, I mean, not in the mainstream media, of course, not, and certainly not in the Kamala campaign, but that's not something a Republican's done since 2004. That's a big deal. She underperformed Biden in every single county in the United States of America. And then the other important thing I'd say is that Trump, you know, as much as people said, oh, it's the women and minorities that are going to carry this for Kamala, Trump got about 46% of women vote, including 52% of white women, a very similar number for the under 30 women. He did about similarly well with the youth vote. So this is...
What's your take on that? Is that a sense, do you think because these people actually like him, or is it because they're so fed up with what we've got at the minute?
I think they're so fed up with what we've got at the moment. And I was thinking back, and they say Gen X, which is the generation sort of born between 65 and 1980. I'm part of that. And we grew up in this 1980s America full of patriotism, and we did well in the Olympics, and we had a great president, not perfect, albeit Reagan, but great. And it was really cool to feel patriotic and, you know, proud of your country. And that has gone away. It's slowly been chipped away at, I think, for younger people. They're told, don't, you know, we are racist and we're misogynist and we're this. And that simply is not the case. And I think the cultural erosion that's taken place at the crisis we have at the southern border, not with immigration, but with illegal immigration, that was the number 2 voting issue. Number 1, of course, was economy, inflation. And the people really got sick of being told, just because I want to concentrate on those issues, that makes me some sort of a fascist or something. So it was a multitude of things. And of course, their candidate was terrible. And they probably should have held a primary.
The word coming out of the Trump party, the after party, as it were. And certainly Nigel Farage said this when he came back to Britain, is that it was the way that Trump managed to get his message out to the key people. And it was Barron who told his son, Barron, who told him, you've got to do the big podcasts, which he did. And apparently...
The bro vote.
Yeah. Really got the message out there. And apparently the figures bear that out, that it got through to that sort of... Well, it was like a certain audience of people who were already interested and motivated them to actually go out and use their vote.
And you're exactly right. And that's what we would call the low propensity voters, right? So the man or woman who, you know, they're sort of like, oh, politics, it's not my thing, I'm not interested, don't like either candidate. And then both Trump, J.D. Vance, and of course Elon Musk, one of his surrogates, went on Joe Rogan, did Theo Vaughn, all these podcasts probably nobody had ever heard of, but Barron, his young son, had said this is where the audience is. And it got, whether you want to call it the crypto bros, of which I am one, except for a woman. But absolutely, Bitcoin.
Crypto
Look at
bro.
Bitcoin.
The crypto.
Well, look, in all seriousness, what this Bitcoin thing, even though people like to brush it aside, it's about decentralization. It's about freedom of transaction, financial freedom. And it got the libertarian vote. So that sort of low propensity vote. They love the fact Elon's talking about Ron Paul looking into Federal Reserve, and everybody knows that Federal Reserve, inflation, printing money, that's how we got to where we are.
Yeah, it lands you in a whole host of trouble. I mean, the bottom line with this, and in a way you sort of see it with how politics is dancing over on this side of the pond as well, is that you've got to... Politicians need to sit back and go, people care about what they've got in their purse, you know, in their wallet at the moment. And that, you know, you can talk about ideals all you want, but if you can't pay for the groceries or pay for the fuel, then you've got to do something about it.
It's very true, and it definitely was money and definitely the crisis at the southern border. But if you ask younger people, again, which were a huge part of this, they do not want these forever wars going on anymore. You know, I realize we're talking about this on Remembrance Day, and, you know, our country is very proud to, you know, fight for what we believe in, but a lot of these wars, the youth vote and even my generation, it's gotten out of control.
But the other thing, it seems to point that the Democrats sort of got it wrong. I mean, you said that they had a bad candidate. Whatever you think of her, they clearly thought that by throwing celebrities at her as well, that they might get the youth vote, or the people who wouldn't normally vote might actually motivate them if George Clooney or Oprah Winfrey told them to go out and vote. And it didn't work. In fact, in some cases, it seems to be proven that it actually worked against them.
Can I say, isn't that great? Isn't it fantastic that you can't buy votes by throwing celebrities and trying to impress people?
Well, Elon Musk literally gave away £1 million a day.
That's different. That was a different thing.
Yeah.
So just so you know, and we're looking at the numbers and look into this. One, you're very right, and it didn't work for Hillary Clinton in 2016. So, and when we saw Taylor Swift not moving the needle, I don't know why they thought Bruce Springsteen and Beyonce would, or Oprah. But the Kamala Harris campaign, though they raised way more money than the Trump campaign did, they are in very serious financial debt because Oprah charged them. Right?
What?
Really? Yes, they charge them. So if you're so worried about fascism and somebody being a Nazi, I'm not sure why you're charging, and Trump kind of elegantly said, hey, because we had so much earned media, I mean, you guys know what that is. For the audience who doesn't, it means media you're not paying for, you're going on a podcast, or you just happen to be in the news, you don't have to pay for it. The Trump campaign has offered to, jokingly, pay off the Kamala Harris campaign. But look, what if you're the 1% and like Beyonce or George Clooney, and I'm struggling to fill up my gas tank or put groceries on the table, like, how is that relatable?
Yeah.
It's not.
Just a final thought before we let you go.
Sure.
Is this going to be a different 4 years? I mean, he's experienced now. The team is gathering around him is a different team. What are we going to see? Can he really deliver?
Yes, he can, and I'll tell you something. We saw something last night. Trump came out and said, you know, Nikki Haley nor Mike Pompeo, former Secretary of State, former UN ambassador, will be a part of my cabinet. I thank them very much for their work in the past, but we're moving on. That is huge. They'd both been, especially Mike Pompeo, wanted Secretary of Defense or Secretary of State role, and a lot of the new team, Bobby Kennedy Jr., Elon, J.D. Vance, Tulsi, again, a couple veterans in there, J.D. Vance and Tulsi, they do not want to see these, forever wars going on. So you're going to see an entirely new, more populist, call it America First. It does not necessarily mean isolationist, but it means it's okay to be patriotic again. It's okay to look after our own people and bring manufacturing back. And, of course, we will still have this special relationship with the United Kingdom.
But, 8 years ago, Trump was a big star, a TV personality.
Yeah.
Totally inexperienced politician. Yep. He is now an experienced politician.
True.
However you think of him, he is.
That's true.
You're right. And he didn't expect to win in 2016. He'll be the first to admit that. So he took advice from perhaps the wrong people.
And that's why he fired a lot of people.
That's why he fired. And I mean, Biden, I'm sorry, not one person has been fired for that disastrous Afghanistan withdrawal. So, sometimes holding people to account works.
Yeah. Jennifer, great to talk to you.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much indeed. Always good to see you. Right, we're running out of time. Let's have a quick look at the weather with Ellie.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. After a cloudy start for many of us this morning, there is some brightness on the way as we head into the new working week with some sunshine on offer for most of us. However, back to this morning, and it's quite a grey and cloudy start as it has been over recent weeks, particularly across the northern half of the UK. Quite a damp start too. An area of rain pushes its way eastwards as we go through this morning. There will be some brighter spells across the southern half of the UK. These few and far between though, and generally a cloudy end to the afternoon. And temperatures a little bit above what we saw yesterday, still a little bit above average for the time of year, maybe 14 or 15 degrees in the south. As we go through the rest of today, that rain band continues to push its way eastwards across parts of Scotland. So for the majority of Scotland, it will be a drier end to the day and quite a clear end to the day as well. Those clear spells persisting for many. 1 or 2 isolated showers across the very far north, these perhaps turning heavy at times. And for Northern Ireland too, generally a dry and clear end to the day. Northern England, parts of Wales, the Midlands, see that cloud and mist and murk continuing with outbreaks of rain slowly spreading their way southwards overnight. And the southern half of the UK generally staying a little bit dry with 1 or 2 clear spells, but turning cloudier as we go into the early hours of Sunday morning as that frontal system continues to sink its way southwards. Those showers do continue for northern parts of Scotland, turning quite blustery at times, but generally plenty of clear spells for much of the northern half of the UK. And under those clear spells could be turning quite chilly with a patch of frost possible in places. Generally just staying a little bit milder further south though, particularly under all that cloud. As we go into Monday morning, that rain band across the very far south lingers for a time across the south coast, but eventually clears its way southwards, leaving a dry and bright day for much of the UK. Plenty of sunshine and blue skies on offer, which will be a welcome change from what we've seen over recent weeks. And temperatures still a little bit above average for the time of year, maybe 13 or 14 in the south and 10 to 12 further north, but feeling pleasant in that sunshine.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Let's just quickly tell you about the Great British Giveaway, which basically is giving you Christmas with a whole load of cash on us. Here are the details.
You could win Christmas on us this year, all magically delivered to you in time for the big day. There's cash, £20,025 in tax-free cash to make your new year go with a bang. There's also £5,000 to spend.
Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Catherine Richards and Jake Singleton-Hill featured on the reality show Love is Blind.
Well, Catherine and Jake are joining us now in the studio for Saturday Morning Live. Thank you very much for joining us. And this is perhaps not the end result that people might have thought that they'd be seeing at this point, because you were both on the show, but you didn't fall in love in the pods, did you?
No, we didn't. I rejected him.
You guys look great together.
Yeah.
Very, very happy as well. It seemed like you guys were really strong, and it almost seemed like Freddie, after he admitted to you that he'd cheated in the past.
I actually respected the fact that he told me up front. I didn't even want to have that conversation, obviously. That was a conversation that we got told to talk about. And I respected his decision, but I think he felt that I was holding this grudge towards him that she really doesn't like, and which was not, and he knew this, because off camera we had many conversations where I was like, thank you for owning up, like, we can just move on from this. But if anything, I think he just felt guilty the whole entire time, and he put that on me, which is fine, but yeah, there's obviously a lot that people don't see.
So for viewers who don't know, Love is Blind is where you go and seek love and romance, but you don't see who you're speaking to, right?
No.
So, Jake, why did you go on the show?
My parents actually met in a very similar way. So my stepdad was texting my mum. He'd basically stolen the number off of a friend because the friend had met my mum in Blackpool, and they were texting for like 6 months. They'd never met. So that premise of how they got together and the marriage that they had was stunning. And to build a relationship not based on looks before you met, I just found that just incredible.
So do you believe in that concept? Is it lust or love at first sight?
It's weird.
It's a bit of both.
I think, it's definitely a bit of both. And I always say, as you get older, your looks will change, but your personality will stay the same.
GB News, the People's Channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 8:30 now. More than 800 Armed Forces personnel will take part in the annual Remembrance Sunday ceremonies in central London today. In fact, I was thinking probably quite a few more.
I would have thought so.
Than that. But many will be from the Royal Air Force, and joining us is Wing Commander Howard Leader. Very good to see you, sir, this morning.
And congratulations on a wonderful breastful of medals. I mean, it looks fantastic.
Quite something.
Yeah.
How important is it for someone like you today to look back at not only the people who've lost their lives, but the people still with us who are suffering, and also those people still serving in the armed forces?
Well, to anybody that has served for this country, or indeed our Commonwealth allies and our friendly countries, paying our tributes to the fallen, first and foremost, is most important. They have laid down their lives in usually terribly traumatic circumstances because our governments have asked them to go and do that very difficult work. So that's vitally important. But I think there's a much deeper, almost like peeling an onion, really, of a set of considerations that I'll be thinking about every remembrance, and that's to do with of course, paying our respects to those who've lost their lives, but remembering also that a great many people who have been put into those very challenging circumstances forever carry the sometimes extreme physical injuries that have come with that because they've been involved in an incident that's cost them arms and legs or whatever. And the mental stress stays with a lot of people too, because in some cases, they're exposed to things that humans are not really conditioned to see and to experience. And I think we need to remember that and be mindful that, you know, we have a community of veterans who may need more support than they're getting.
Well, that's it. I mean, today will be a wonderful spectacle, watching all those people march past the Cenotaph, every one of them with a story. But they are alive, and that's one thing, to remember the dead. But to remember those who've had life-altering changes because of conflict or whatever, those are the ones that we just don't seem to be able to acknowledge fully and help. Why not? Why can't we motivate the same sort of level of emotion towards them?
I think when there are obvious physical injuries, it's easier for people to to realise that that person has suffered and to offer some sort of support. I think it's particularly difficult when it's the non-obvious effects of their service. And, of course, this doesn't apply to everybody. You know, a lot of people go through their service careers and they come out of it as strong individuals and, you know, look back on a very interesting time. But there, of course, are many who, because of circumstance, you know, those peculiar moments in active service, find them in a position where, you know, they experience something very traumatic and something that most of us would, you know...
Is it uniquely British, not being able to talk about that sort of thing?
I don't know. I really don't know about that, but I know what you mean. You hear this of generations, don't you? Both of my grandparents and my grandfathers served in the First World War.
I was going to say, did you come from a forces family?
Well, I think most of us, if we trace our roots back, you know, for the wars of national survival, we'll find that everybody pitched in. So, yes, my father's father was in the infantry and my mother's father was in the Royal Flying Corps. I didn't know Mum's dad, but my father's father I knew. He lived long enough for me to, you know, be a teenager.
So how old were you when you joined up?
Never talked about it.
He never discussed it. And
that generation didn't.
And I think he found it quite difficult. I did start to take an interest as I grew up, you know, and I would ask him a bit, and he was always very... He'd answer the question, but very briefly and without going into any details. I think it was just too difficult for him.
Yeah, it's interesting how people cope in their own ways with it or attempt to cope. What about the military covenant? Do we need a strengthening of the military covenant in this country? Because it's also not just... And I don't want to pile... As you say, a lot of people come out of the armed forces and they are strengthened and resilient and great leaders and multi-skilled and all this sort of thing.
Careers, yeah, exactly.
But there are a lot of people who are coming out and struggling, and part of that is going to be things like being institutionalised, which you are in the armed forces to an extent. You know, Civvy Street is a different world. Do we need to have a stronger covenant that says, when you leave, for whatever reason, we're going to support you, ease you back into society a bit more carefully?
I think the Armed Forces Covenant is a great idea. I don't know that it's well enough known yet. It's only been going for it was about a decade, I think. I'm a reservist, so I'm in the RAF Reserve, the Royal Auxiliary Air Force, and have spent all of my time as a specialist contributor, if you like. So I had a civilian career alongside that. But the Armed Forces Covenant is particularly important to reservists because it puts a measure of protection around individuals who will, by the state, be required to take some time out of their day job and go and serve our country, and it guarantees that they'll have their job to go back to at the end of that service. And what we found in the reserve area is that employers have been, on the whole, very eager to get involved with that and sign up for it, because the training and the skills and the leadership that individuals learn during their military service translates directly to what they do in their day jobs, you know, so there is a symbiosis there.
Yes, but in a way, what you just said suggests that actually we look after reservists better than we look after full-time?
Well, I can't really speak for
I know it's different, but it just shows, doesn't it?
Yes, my experience of the Armed Forces
You've risen to the enormously high rank of wing commander, which suggests you've been in the business a long time.
24 years.
Really?
Yes, and but that's that's a good example of what I've been saying. The military gives even reservists the opportunity to grow, to develop, to command a squadron, which I have done.
So you would have been squadron leader?
Yes.
Very good.
Squadron leader squared, as they used to call me.
Yes.
Very good. I just wonder if, I mean, looking back on that time and the sort of the peacetime work, if you like, away from the hellishness that can go on, that must have been a hell of a thrill. Actually, so some of the stuff, just some of the machinery you were dealing with and what you were doing must have been quite something. It's a great career, isn't it? It can be.
I think so. I mean, I believe that I've been really privileged to have had the chance to contribute, to be involved in some of the things that I have. My own squadron is in our own field. It was the media squadron. So our job was to go with the Royal Air Force everywhere it goes and tell its story. And I always used to say to people joining, what we're going to get is a ringside seat on the making of history. And it's quite true, you know. So that has been an immense privilege for me as a working media practitioner.
Well, actually, yes, and also, yes, getting the story out there, telling people about it, because recruitment and everything. But it's also just motivating people towards having more respect, I suppose, for our servicemen and women.
Definitely. I think if people have served in the reserve, they take back all of that understanding to the communities that they come from, you know. And I read a statistic recently, which I'm sure is probably right. Only 3% of the population now have a direct connection with the armed forces.
Really?
So, you know, this is why remembrance is so important, and so that we can keep on reminding people that, you know, our armed forces, they're not just faceless individuals that live in a box and are taken out at times of crisis. They're people that live in our communities. They're citizens, and they do this work at the behest of our governments when there's a crisis or when there's a need for armed forces intervention. And I think it's important that, you know, we keep telling that story and recognising the sacrifices.
So is the media squadron out and about somewhere today?
All over the place today.
Yes. Wing Commander, really good to see you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Yes, there's a big argument. I think we need more respect. And it's that argument. It is actually what Donald Trump is saying on the other side of the Atlantic, but the idea of peace through strength. And certainly you can apply that to our armed forces, can't you? Let's get them built up and ready to roll and help maintain peace in that way.
Which brings us to our question in our poll of the day. And today we're asking, for instance, when you look at young people, are schools doing enough to make sure children understand what our veterans' service has all been about and what today is all about? We'll be bringing you the live results throughout the day, so make sure you stay tuned. Final result will be announced a bit later on in Nana Aqua's show. Yeah,
if you want to take part, you can scan that QR code on your screen if you're watching on the TV. If you're listening on the radio, good morning to you. Go to gbnews.com/poll.
Still to come, find out what's happening in the sports today. That's next.
Join me, Nana Aqua, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player app. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
3 incredible young people from Essex are planning to become the youngest people ever to row, not sail, row, across the Atlantic Ocean.
It's about for 3,000 miles.
It is.
Give or take.
Almost exactly that, Sam.
The 3 flying fish, so-called, consists of Anna, Dunk, Harry, Alan and Rowan Daly, who are preparing to row that 3,000 miles across the Atlantic. It would be the second largest ocean in the world. And the trio are aiming to do that challenge in support of the Teenage Cancer Trust.
Well, I'm very pleased to say that Anna and Harry from the Flying Fish join us now. Very good morning to both of you.
Good morning.
I think the two of you are bonkers, but brilliant. Absolutely incredible what you're doing to raise money for Teenage Cancer Trust. Why did you want to do this?
So, our third person, Rowan, his friend actually died. So when he was in secondary school, I believe, one of his peers passed away, and Teenage Cancer Trust supported them and their family a lot. So it was definitely the right charity. Yeah, it was.
Absolutely awful. So you wanted to do something to raise money for teenage cancer. Why rowing?
So my dad did it in 2021.
The trip, the Atlantic trip?
Yeah, he rowed it as a pair. Where we live in Essex, they actually build the boats there. So we used to cycle round there past the boatyard, and he got interested and actually did it. He was the first year after COVID. And one night, we all met in the Air Cadets, so one night after Air Cadets, Rowan actually dropped me off home and the boat was outside. We were obviously waiting to get it sold. And I think he was asking some questions, and we stood there at my porch and went, Rowan said, I reckon we could do that. And I was like, yeah, I reckon we could. And then we brought Harry on board, and that's kind of how it all came together.
If people are watching and they want to support you, do you have a
Yeah, we've got
GoFundMe page
social
yet?
media platforms at
Right.
The Free Flying Fish. That's Facebook, Instagram and TikTok, and our GoFundMe links in all of the bios on there.
Fantastic.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Aidan's got the sport at 8:43, where England in the rugby have managed to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory again.
Yeah, well, about 3 times in the last 10 minutes, actually. I mean, look, I proudly predicted yesterday that although England are not a bit out of sorts, they'd lost their previous 4 matches, or sorry, 3 matches, 4 now after yesterday, but I thought they would swat away the Wallabies at Twickenham. How wrong I was. The captain, Jamie George, described some of the defending as unforgivable. And Steve Borthwick, the coach, has some serious questions to answer. Now, last week, he shut down a reporter who said, is this a psychological problem, the fact that you're leading going late into matches, albeit against decent sides, but you're not seeing the job through? You should be able to do that. You know, if that happens 3 or 4 times, you would fancy that England would be able to seal the deal within, you know, maybe 1 or 2 occasions at least. But the fact they're not being able to do that, Borthwick was asked if it was a psychological issue, and he shut the reporter down by saying no, he won't be able to get away with that in the aftermath of this, because, I mean, the scoreline, I mean, I was talking to one of my colleagues backstage, I mean, it was a hell of a scoreline, 42 to 37, and it went to and fro towards the end, but England were leading, and 15-3 in the first half. That smacks to me when you're playing a weaker opposition, and this isn't the Australia of old. They're showing some shoots of recovery. They look as if they're going to get back to somewhere where they were previously, but this is not a vintage Australia side. They're 9th in the world, and if you're leading 15-3 in the first half, you have to be able to see that through. Eddie Jones said 5 years ago he felt this culture was seeping in to rugby union. He was somebody who had relative success as England coach, and he said that losing is becoming a habit. And I don't think this has been addressed over a long period of time, and it was very much in evidence yesterday. Later today, we've got Wales in action against Fiji, Scotland in action against South Africa at 4:10, but lots of soul-searching to be done on behalf of the RFU, all the fans, and Steve Borthwick and his players.
Dear me. Yeah, no, it's not good. Can we talk about James McLean?
Yeah.
This is a Wrexham player, but because we're on Remembrance Sunday, he's not a fan.
No, he's not. But you know, it's not a new thing. I mean, he doesn't. So he doesn't. This is for those who don't know. He is a player. He plays for Wrexham, as you say, in Wales, obviously in the English League. But he has previously played for Stoke City and Sunderland in the Premier League and Wigan. He's had some big clubs. He's a well-known player. He's in the Republic of Ireland international. But he doesn't wear the poppy on his shirt, and it's a bigger thing in football in a way because it's woven into the shirt. So the shirt, I presume, would have to be especially customised for him. Yesterday, this is the first time I've seen this happen. I mean, this has begun since 2011, 2012. But he stood apart from the players. For the benefit of our radio listeners, we've got a picture there on the screen of James McLean in number 7 standing apart. He is from County Derry. He grew up on the Cregan estate, where six people were killed during the Bloody Sunday riots back in 1972, or the attacks rather. And he makes a stand every year. He should be able to do that within the context of football, but it doesn't half rile up supporters. The Welsh supporters there in Wrexham yesterday were a little bit more forgiving yesterday, it has to be said. But it's a story that surfaces every year. He's made his position clear. Sometimes he antagonises people on social media. But, yeah, yet again, every single year it comes into focus when...
He didn't need to stand apart. If you want to not do it, look, that's everyone's right, but you don't have to do it quite so obviously.
Well, if you look at the pictures, they're clear. I mean, someone said a foot. I think it's more like a metre.
Yeah.
From his nearest players. And it doesn't portray the image... Even if you're a casual fan who doesn't have an opinion, it doesn't portray the image of unity.
It matters to his family. It probably matters to his community back home.
Yes, absolutely.
I sort of... as long as he didn't do any more than that, I can't help thinking that, everybody's got a right to a view, I suppose.
Yes, and I suppose the more he gets criticised for it, the more defiant he becomes, and every year it's...
I mean, I can understand certain people from certain communities having that very strong.
Yeah, it is his right. It is his right to do that. I completely agree with you. But yeah, just it's a story every year. But I've never seen him stand apart from the rest of the players.
Well, what about the tennis?
Tennis, yeah. Cam Norrie got to the final yesterday in Metz in France. He lost to local guy Benjamin Bonzi in straight sets, but good progress from him. He goes back into the top 50 when the rankings come out tomorrow, and that's just a little bit of progress. He's been usurped slightly in British
Getting to the final has pushed him up a few notches,
in theory, that means you get slightly more favourable draws going forward. There's the Australian Open coming up in January, but he finishes his season not winning the final, but significant progress from where he's been the previous 18 months.
Aidan, thank you.
Good to see you both this weekend.
And you. Right, don't go anywhere. We've got the papers heading your way in just a minute.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Penelope's, which is situated in the sophisticated Hotel Armano in Covent Garden, delivers punchy dishes from the executive chef Fez Ozalgan. London-born, she's of Turkish Cypriot heritage, and at the tender age of 16, she enrolled at catering college. So, it's lovely to see you, Fez. Welcome to the programme.
Thank you.
So you're now in a very prestigious position. I'm always impressed that in the world of chefing, it's possible to get to very senior positions quite young, if you're good enough. Talent is rewarded, is it not?
Definitely, yeah. It does take a lot of hard work, for sure. But, yes.
When did you know that you wanted to be a chef?
Honestly, because my parents have a cafe in Barking. And I used to go there when I was younger, in school holidays and weekends to help them. And actually, I'll be honest, I just used to really admire everyone calling my dad chef, and that's what I wanted.
And what about your food inspirations? Because I believe the food that you produce now is what? Mediterranean influenced and also to some extent Middle East influenced?
Yeah, and Spanish as well at Penelope's, yeah. So our concept at Penelope's, our CEO, Ariel, he is Israeli, but he grew up in Marbella. So,
These are the great influences.
Yeah.
What have you brought here today?
OK, so we have our sea bream tartare, which is a really good inspiration of both Spanish and Israeli. It's marinated with harissa, and it's served with a really nice gazpacho sauce, caviar on top.
I wonder whether the camera can see that. It is the most gorgeous coloured sauce on top of my sea bream tartare. That's marvellous.
GB News, the People's Channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date. Or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Right, let's have a quick look through the papers with Winston Davis and Lynn May. Good to see you both. Winston, in The Sun on Sunday, cadet training in schools
is going to be cut.
We announced this Remembrance Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, timing could have been a bit better. So they've cut nearly £1 million from cadet training in schools, which is military training, skills, camping, first aid, things like that. It's about £4,000 per school. They're still going to get some other funding from the MOD, but again, the time is not great. And actually, I was talking about sort of decisions made by the government as they come in. The other week, they were talking about these elite academies that were going a partnership between Eton and some northern areas, and they're reviewing them, they're saying, or cutting them. And actually, these are opportunities for people to get social mobilisation. And this seems, for me, it's like, the decision making here, I don't understand it. We want people with aspiration, we want people to be able to move forward, and we want people to talk about levelling up early in the last section. Well, these things are going to fly in the face of that.
I think this is the worst possible time, especially when, excuse the term, a lot of young boys are, you know, they're like wet leaves, aren't they, now? There's no resilience, there's no strength, and I think cadets, we're talking about national service and how there's a need for it, and then we're cutting funding for cadets, especially when young people are faced with an increase of 50% in depression. It gives young people purpose, structure.
We just talked about we talked about it in the break. I mean, I've been to prison, and I said prison was really great for me because it allowed me to get structure, discipline. I couldn't talk back to someone because if not, I'm going to get longer.
We want them in cadets before they get to prison.
I've said before in this show, I'm up for and would support during the 2 years national service, something like that, just to give people that may not get it, that sense of structure.
They should have never cut this,
Yeah, all right, look, we're almost out of time. I hate to say it's been very tight, but we've had a lot of veterans to talk to today. Lynn, can we talk about farmers in the Sunday Telegraph?
Yes, so farmers threaten to blockade ports and starve supermarkets, and you can just understand the frustration because they wanted to protest, and that's been blocked too. And when we see disruptive protests, even though they have the right to protest, you know, these eco-warrior protests and other protests, and to have the farmers not have a say, and they essentially are our lifeline with food.
Yeah, they really are.
I don't blame them for whatever action they take next.
No, they'll be, honestly, 19th of November, they'll be down in their tens of thousands.
And I would be in full support of them.
Absolutely, peacefully protesting, but being heard, and quite right too.
Yeah.
Look, I'm sorry it's been so short. Winston, Lynn, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Right, let's catch up with the weather.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. After a cloudy start for many of us this morning, there is some brightness on the way as we head into the new working week with some sunshine on offer for most of us. However, back to this morning, and it's quite a grey and cloudy start as it has been over recent weeks, particularly across the northern half of the UK. Quite a damp start too. An area of rain pushes its way eastwards as we go through this morning. There will be some brighter spells across the southern half of the UK, these few and far between though, and generally a cloudy end to the afternoon. And temperatures a little bit above what we saw yesterday, still a little bit above average for the time of year, maybe 14 or 15 degrees in the south. As we go through the rest of today, that rain band continues to push its way eastwards across parts of Scotland. So for the majority of Scotland, it will be a drier end to the day and quite a clear end to the day as well. Those clear spells persisting for many. One or two isolated showers across the very far north, these perhaps turning heavy at times. And for Northern Ireland too, generally a dry and clear end to the day. Northern England, parts of Wales, the Midlands, see that cloud and mist and murk continuing with outbreaks of rain slowly spreading their way southwards overnight. And the southern half of the UK generally staying a little bit dry with one or two clear spells, but turning cloudier as we go into the early hours of Sunday morning as that frontal system continues to sink its way southwards. Those showers do continue for northern parts of Scotland, turning quite blustery at times, but generally plenty of clear spells for much of the northern half of the UK. And under those clear spells could be turning quite chilly with a patch of frost possible in places. Generally just staying a little bit milder further south though, particularly under all that cloud. As we go into Monday morning, that rain band across the very far south lingers for a time across the south coast, but eventually clears its way southwards, leaving a dry and bright day for much of the UK. Plenty of sunshine and blue skies on offer, which will be a welcome change from what we've seen over recent weeks. And temperatures still a little bit above average for the time of year, maybe 13 or 14 in the south and 10 to 12 further north, but feeling pleasant in that sunshine.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
There's only 2 weeks remaining to win Christmas on Us this year. There's £20,025 in tax-free cash. There's £5,000 to spend on gifts for all the family. There's £500 to spend in your favourite supermarket. And a festively themed GB News goodie bag. We'll get it all to you in time for the big day. For another chance to win, call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232.
That passenger got through, or almost got through, one episode. One James Bond movie in 8 hours.
But you know, it's interesting. We call it train Wi-Fi, but it isn't. It's just really a SIM card on a train, really. So if your own phone's not going to get signal, why would we assume that the train's going to have signal? It just doesn't work like that. Unless you're in Japan or South Korea, whose infrastructure is infinitely better than ours, you're just not going to get signal. You have to download those films way before you get on
There is technology that can help with that. You know, there really is. If they found ways to put it underground, they can get it on ground and get you going. I definitely think, you know, with the price that we're paying for these tickets, they can get the Wi-Fi going. There is technology.
That's why it's so frustrating, isn't
Call
it?
Elon, get a Starlink, let's go.
If you're a passenger paying hundreds of pounds for a season ticket or whatever you call it, and, you know, commute to work every single day and you're paying all this money and you can't
It's so expensive. You'd expect Wi-Fi at the basic, exactly.
But it happens with phone signal as well. I'll be walking down London in Park Lane or somewhere else or down on the south coast. I just don't have phone signal and I think to myself, what on earth is going on?
Doesn't it feel like 5G's made it worse, though?
Yeah.
Because I feel like 4G, that didn't happen so much, but 5G just feels like...
Yeah, and then I always get this little E in the top corner of my phone and I don't get any signal. I think it's got worse over the past couple of years. Yeah, especially with 5G. I agree with that.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good morning to you. It's Remembrance Sunday, and today we pay tribute to those who sacrificed their lives for our freedom.
Events, of course, began last night with the royal family leading the nation at the Royal British Legion's Festival of Remembrance.
And at 11 this morning, the King will guide the nation through 2 minutes of silence, remembering all those who serve our country.
The Princess of Wales, of course, delighted everyone because she returned to official duties at last night's service alongside Prince William.
Also this morning, we're going to talk to the incredible 100-year-old lady whose service to the country during the war will not be forgotten.
Did the late Queen disapprove of Boris Johnson? Well, that's in a new book which claims that Britain's longest reigning monarch had little time for the controversial Prime Minister.
Trump's clean sweep. The comeback kid wins the state of Arizona, meaning he's won all 7 swing states.
It's been a cloudy start for many of us today, but there is some sunshine on the way into the new working week. Join me later for the full forecast with all the details.
It's just gone 9 o'clock. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Anne Diamond, and this is GB News Breakfast.
Just desperately trying to load up some views, but it's it's always I just think, well, I'll just quickly load up the views.
I've found that there are so many views coming in that it actually completely takes up all the memory or something on my computer and I have to refresh completely every so often.
Oh, here's an interesting
Thank you
one.
very much for getting in touch with me.
Susanna says, should all future leaders of this country only be given a high-ranking political role if they've served in the British forces?
It's an interesting thought.
It's an interesting thought. It's not going to work.
No, it would be too
but
limiting,
it's an interesting
I guess.
thought. Mo says, my father was South African and joined the RAF from there, but retired in 1959, then went back to America. He really suffered. He said, I've always believed that survivor's guilt was part of the problem.
I think
there's
survivor's
a lot-
guilt is
yeah.
part of PTSD, isn't it?
Yeah.
Of course, if you've lost... And the other thing I was thinking about the Commonwealth War Graves Commission, the lady we interviewed earlier talking about the incredible work that's done, is that it doesn't matter how many years go by, there's always somebody who still has yet to find a grave that means something to them. And when you go to the very big cemeteries, you always find family groups who are either looking for somebody who meant something to an older member of the family who served, or I'm thinking of my mother and her friend who went back. He'd lost his squadron. He'd flown so many hours that he was told, you can't fly tomorrow. You've got to take a certain break, which meant that, and he was captain of the squadron, and so he took a break, and so his squadron went up with not squadron. His plane went up. His crew went up with a different captain.
And didn't come back.
And they didn't come back. And they were lost in France. And he had never ever been to see where they were buried. And my mother went out with him to one of the huge cemeteries in France, and they found all the names And he was in his 80s when he found.
See, it's stuff like that, though, isn't it?
It meant
Whereas
something then. All those years later, it meant such a lot.
you just sort of think, whereas you sort of think, you'd think, wow, that was a close escape. But of course, they're not going to feel like that, are they? They're just going to feel this tremendous guilt that on the one day they didn't go up, everyone else died.
And that was the reason that he went on and had a very long and interesting life, but never forgot his crew who didn't come back.
Yeah.
And there were so many stories like that.
It's frightening. It's frightening, but we need to remember all of that, which is what today and tomorrow are all about. But also we need to show respect for the armed forces as they serve now. And the veterans who are with us now. There's got to be this real looking after our armed forces and respect for the armed forces.
Lynn in Cumbria says, my uncle was at Dunkirk. He never talked about it until just before he died. It was heart-wrenching, but he always brushed it off with true grit.
Yeah, not everyone can do that, though. Anyway, it is a very solemn day, very solemn weekend. And so we've got Remembrance Sunday today, Armistice Day tomorrow, and millions of us will pause to reflect on the sacrifices of our veterans.
Yeah, so the King and other members of the royal family and government will gather at the Cenotaph, of course, to remember all those who had died in the line of duty.
Well, last night the royal family joined together. Without the Queen, she's got a chest infection, but they gathered at the Royal Albert Hall for the Festival of Remembrance.
And, of course, it also marked the Princess of Wales's return to official duties with William by her side.
Well, of course, the service at the Cenotaph is our national service of remembrance. Jack Carson is with those preparing Horse Cards Parade. Morning, Jack.
Morning to you both. Thousands of members of the public are going to be lining Whitehall shortly to be part of that Remembrance Sunday service. Here where we are at Horse Guards Parade, as you can see around me, there are veterans as far as the eye can see. 10,000 veterans and also civilians are taking part in the Royal British Legion's march past the Cenotaph. And let's speak to one of them, Mike Kiff, who's going to be actually marching for the first time. You're an Army veteran. You're going to be marching past the Cenotaph for the first time. How much does this mean to you today?
It means so much to me. It's a huge honour, and I've always wanted to do it, but I've just never had the, I won't say courage, but never had the drive to actually put myself forward for it. And then last year, I just thought, no, I've put it off long enough now. I need to get myself there.
I mean, you were on active service. You did tours in Afghanistan, Iraq, in the Balkans as well. Tell us a little bit about your service there.
In the Balkans, we were just doing communications for a new headquarters. So our role out there was to basically build communication centres so everybody could operate out there. When I went to Iraq in 2005, I was looking after Baghdad. And there was only 2 people out there that did my job, so we were sort of transiting around sort of Baghdad, covering all the embassies and the other British military sites. And then when I went to Afghanistan, I did exactly the same thing, but in Kabul. And you know, they were good tours. A little bit noisy at times. We experienced quite a lot of sort of incoming rocket fire when we were in Afghanistan, a big VBID just outside the camp we were staying on. But it was sort of just get on with your day and everyday business, even though that was towards the end of the Herricks.
I mean, does it feel a little bit more personal to you, given the fact that it is 10 years since the end of combat operations? Does this year feel a little bit personal, given that you were on a tour in Afghanistan? You know people that were there that served alongside you.
Yeah. I think with Afghanistan, because there were so many lives lost, I don't think you can walk into a room in many places on an army camp and not know somebody that's lost somebody, or know somebody that's lost their life in conflict.
I mean, you were medically discharged, weren't you, from the armed forces? Tell us about that, and then how the Royal British Legion have helped you through that.
So when I was in Afghanistan for Herrick 20. And I had a shoulder injury where basically a repair that had been done ripped off the bone. When I got back to the UK, I was told that I would get medically discharged. I fell into a very, very deep mental hole, as well as being in chronic pain, and I was suicidal. I reached out for help, and the Royal British Legion stepped in and provided that for me. I went to a recovery centre in Germany, which was fully funded by the RBL, and they gave me career advice, financial advice, housing advice, taught me how to relax. They had psychologists come in and speak to us, just to sort of help us through that transition. And even though I still suffer with my mental health and chronic pain, they've not left my side since. So we're 9 years on now. And even last month I went to the Baselback Centre up in Lillyshaw and did a multi-activity course up there with other veterans in the same situation. So, you know, they're still here.
And of course, every year, you know, millions and millions of pounds are raised for the Royal British Legion through the Poppy Appeal, and that's really where the money goes. It's supporting people like yourself. I mean, how thankful are you for those people that donate every year? Incredibly grateful. You can't even sum it up in words. Without the donations from the general public, the Royal British Legion wouldn't be able to provide the high-quality service they provide to us veterans that need it. Mike, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Thank you for your service and good luck to march past the Cenotaph today. Mike is just one of, as I said, 10,000 people that are gathered here, as you can see all around me, ready for that service a little bit later on.
OK, Jack, thanks very much indeed. And if you're watching and you're heading out to remember someone in particular today, we're thinking of you. I know members of my family will be doing that, and it's a very painful day for a lot of people, very, very painful. For those who can just show respect, then it should be done, shouldn't it?
Clive's been in touch. He says, my dad fought in Burma. He told me that the things he saw would never leave him. He died when I was 13. He was only 47. I've always thought his time in Burma played a big part in his short life. Bet it did.
So there's so many horrific things. They just haunt people, I think. Anyway, let's hope lots of respect shown today. Let's hope our respect for the armed forces grows over the coming years, because I think it needs to. Whether we're in peacetime or wartime, that respect needs to be there. Anyway, let's talk about Boris Johnson, should we? It's been a while.
Yes.
There's a new book out by the author, and there's an acclaimed author, Tim Shipman. It's called No Way Out. It's about the Queen Elizabeth and Boris Johnson, amongst other things.
Yes, he quotes anonymous courtiers who have briefed him on certain things, on what the Queen really thought. And apparently she said that she wanted to hang on long enough to see Boris off the premises. But we can't help wondering whether it's disrespectful to speak on her behalf when she's actually no longer with us. That's what many of you are thinking this morning.
Lots of messages saying just that. Let's talk to political commentator, former Mayor of Middlesbrough, Andy Preston. Morning, Andy.
Morning.
What do you make of all of this? I mean, look, it'll sell. It'll sell because people ultimately are nosy and want to know all the tittle-tattle. Yeah. But it doesn't necessarily feel right to us.
I think it'll definitely sell, and the fact we're talking about it tells us everything. It involves the royal family, which people love to read about, especially inside gossip. Boris Johnson massively divides opinion.
But still interests everybody.
Still interests. If we walk down the street with Boris now, some people would come out and shake his hand and get a selfie, and some people would throw eggs and tomatoes at him. And he's that kind of person. So it's a perfect piece of journalism in that it will attract attention. I'm afraid that I have to say, I don't know if we should take it too seriously. It's second-hand, third-hand snippets, which, while the quotes may be accurate, I say may, we don't know the exact context. And I think you said earlier, Anne, the Queen may have delivered one of them with a roll of the eyes or a wry smile. And so I think that this is interesting and fascinating. Tim Shipman is a great journalist and writer, but I'm not sure it's a great chronicle of history or could be taken as reliable.
No. I suppose it's like believing what you see in The Crown.
Yes, absolutely, yes. Great entertainment, but not necessarily a great historical representation.
Yeah, it makes us feel uncomfortable, I think, because we know that the relationship between the Queen and any of her Prime Ministers is meant to be secret. That's sort of understood. The Queen actually said, didn't she, once, or I think it might have been on The Crown, she said it, that, this is the one conversation I can have, which I know will not be leaked. And the Prime Minister she was speaking to said the same. And yet, courtiers are briefing this particular author on things that maybe it's not. She's dead. Why disrespect her in this way?
It feels like people have a grudge against Boris Johnson, rightly or wrongly, to me. I think that the strength of the royal family is an element of distance from everyday life and everyday goings-on and gossip. And I think they are and should try to remain above gossip. And I do think that courtiers, if that's what's happened, coming out and relaying private conversations, I think it's inappropriate. I think it diminishes the royal household, and I think they should wind their necks.
Well, they probably had their own varying opinions on Boris, wouldn't they have?
Yes, absolutely. I think they're entitled to opinions on Boris, but I don't think they should be relaying private conversations from our head of state. And as I say, the strength of the royal family is their discretion and their respectful distance from gossip and salacious chatter. So I feel disappointed by this. It's great reading. It'll sell books. Is it a great representation? I doubt it.
Talking about representation, what's going to go on, do you think, come January the 20th with number 10 and the White House? It's going to be... It looks like it's going to be, on the surface, a good relationship. Underneath, it's going to be a little bit strained. It's hard to know because Donald Trump has got such a mandate now that Labour are going to... they can't dismiss him as this swivel-eyed loon or whatever people were tweeting 4 or 5 years ago.
Absolutely. It's going to be fascinating. I think that Labour are backpedalling and trying to cuddle him as much as they can. I think Donald Trump really responds to flattery. So rolling out the red carpet, I think Nigel Farage said that, they've got to roll out the red carpet. There was this image of Donald Trump as someone who holds grudges and never forgets or forgives. However, if you look at his relationship with Vance, which is clearly very strong, Vance said dreadful things. I think the situation is recoverable. The thing that I find really interesting is Trump is talking about tariffs. By the way, I don't know whether he will, because he says lots of things and then changes his mind the next minute. But Rachel Reeves has suggested that she will instigate a great deal with him and win remission from the tariffs in return for other favours. If Rachel Reeves and Donald Trump were going into a discussion, a debate, to try and find a deal, my money would be on Trump every day. So I'd be very sceptical as to whether Labour can do a great deal.
Isn't she threatening to say, well, if he charges us tariffs, we'll charge him tariffs?
Yeah, I think...
which is ridiculous, because, I mean, we're so unbalanced.
And I mean, tariffs are arguably really stupid anyway. Free trade is great. That free capitalism allows business to transact quickly and efficiently. And it does make everyone richer, but without tariffs, it's very cruel, or without grants, it's very cruel, and businesses can close overnight and money moves very quickly. So you do need some government intervention.
But isn't it an odd thing to do for her to sort of threaten that she's going to be tough with him when we don't even know what he's going to do?
It's a very odd thing to do, and I think she looks silly. I don't think anybody, even her biggest fans, think that she could out-negotiate Donald Trump. And I'm not the biggest Trump fan, but
why antagonise him now?
Why antagonise him? I think the relationship can be great. The other factor, of course, with Donald Trump is the influence of Elon Musk and his involvement in the White House. He clearly has an issue with Keir Starmer and the Labour Party. So it's going to be a challenge, but I think they can recover it. But talking about out-negotiating him and imposing tariffs of our own, I think is the wrong approach at this point.
It's interesting because, I mean, we have commentators on who say, this is like student politics with the Labour Party. Now, look, I don't know that I agree with that necessarily, but it doesn't seem experienced politics. There's no... I mean, I know they're in opposition for a long time, but a lot of them have still been on the opposition benches for a long time. Where's the serious thought processing here?
I think Labour are in shock. First of all, they realise that it's dead easy to throw stones and name-call, and it's really hard to take the tough decisions which divide the country. First of all, they learned that. But I think there's a real lack of experience at a senior level. There isn't that governmental experience. So when you change prime ministers, but if there's a party in power for 2 or 3 terms, you have that continuity of senior ministers. As someone who was an elected politician, when you start on day one, you don't know what's going on. You don't know who you can trust. You don't know how it works. And people that work for a living as a civil servant run rings around you. They frustrate. If you want to do something they don't want to do, they find a way to not make it happen. And it takes years to learn that. A second term is always better.
So it's yes, Minister. basically.
Totally. I mean, genuinely, that is exactly what it's like.
Yeah.
And Donald Trump, rightly or wrongly, will be far more effective now. He knows how it works. He's got better people around him, and he'll cut through the BS.
Oh.
Am I allowed to say that?
Well, you have done now. I think we're safe with that one.
Absolutely.
Andy, good to see you. Thank you.
Sandra's been in touch. Morning, Sandra, saying, my grandfather was at the Somme. I had 2 uncles in Burma. My father was in Borneo, my husband in Northern Ireland, and my son was in Bosnia, Iraq and Afghanistan, ending up with PTSD and severe depression. To the Wrexham footballer, shame on you.
Well, fair point, I think, I have to say. Right, we're going to have a look at the weather for you today, see how things are going to pan out. Here's Ellie.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. After a cloudy start for many of us this morning, there is some brightness on the way as we head into the new working week with some sunshine on offer for most of us. However, back to this morning, and it's quite a grey and cloudy start as it has been over recent weeks, particularly across the northern half of the UK. Quite a damp start too. An area of rain pushes its way eastwards as we go through this morning. There will be some brighter spells across the southern half of the UK, these few and far between though, and generally a cloudy end to the afternoon. And temperatures a little bit above what we saw yesterday, still a little bit above average for the time of year, maybe 14 or 15 degrees in the south. As we go through the rest of today, that rain band continues to push its way eastwards across parts of Scotland. So for the majority of Scotland, it will be a drier end to the day and quite a clear end to the day as well. Those clear spells persisting for many. 1 or 2 isolated showers across the very far north, these perhaps turning heavy at times. And for Northern Ireland too, generally a dry and clear end to the day. Northern England, parts of Wales, the Midlands, see that cloud and mist and murk continuing with outbreaks of rain slowly spreading their way southwards overnight. And the southern half of the UK generally staying a little bit dry with 1 or 2 clear spells, but turning cloudier as we go into the early hours of Sunday morning as that frontal system continues to sink its way southwards. Those showers do continue for northern parts of Scotland, turning quite blustery at times, but generally plenty of clear spells for much of the northern half of the UK. And under those clear spells could be turning quite chilly with a patch of frost possible in places. Generally just staying a little bit milder further south though, particularly under all that cloud. As we go into Monday morning, that rain band across the very far south lingers for a time across the south coast, but eventually clears its way southwards, leaving a dry and bright day for much of the UK. Plenty of sunshine and blue skies on offer, which will be a welcome change from what we've seen over recent weeks. And temperatures still a little bit above average for the time of year, maybe 13 or 14 in the south and 10 to 12 further north, but feeling pleasant in that sunshine.
We can expect clear skies, leading to a light and warm day ahead. Lovely. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Time for the Great British Giveaway now. We're giving away a GB News goodie bag.
Yeah, but it's got cash in it, and an awful lot of cash. If you want to know more, here are the details.
We're giving you the chance to win everything you need to celebrate the festivities. There's £20,025 in tax-free cash. There's £5,000 to spend on gifts.
As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy. Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
It seems that the younger generation's interest in literature is waning. Academics argue that educational policies have failed to encourage reading for pleasure, contributing to declining numbers of English literature students and a shift towards young adult books rather than classic novels. According to 2023 figures from the National Literacy Trust, the number of 8 to 18-year-olds who say they enjoy reading has sunk to its lowest level for almost 20 years, with a quarter fewer reading each day over that same time period. To share more with us about this topic, I'm joined now by the journalist Charlotte Lytton. Charlotte, welcome back. Lovely to talk to you again. Tell us your perspective on this issue. What is happening?
Well, speaking to academics, we can't deny, it seems, that there is a big problem here, and it starts right at school. As you read there, young children simply don't enjoy reading for pleasure as they did before. We can't deny that is also a massive part because of smartphones, because kids now are faced with all of these things vying for their attention. They just don't have to sit down and entertain themselves with a long book and nothing else as they did before. As we see from those figures with people going to study humanities at university, the decline is just going all the way because people simply are not interested in reading for pleasure as they were.
Do you get any feeling that education policy or that teachers are taking steps to counter this?
Well, there is a review of the curriculum going ahead right now, but school is a huge part of it. One of the things that has come up in this conversation is whether teachers now are dealing with crowd control, which means they can't simply encourage reading for pleasure because they're simply trying to get a hold of the students they have.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment. This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory. Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark meets and My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now, ahead of the National Service of Remembrance at 11 o'clock, the public are turning out to watch from Parliament Square.
Well, GB News' reporter Adam Cherry has headed down to the scene. Let's see who he's met. Hi there, Adam.
Morning, guys. Yeah, I'm standing just outside the Foreign Office, actually. It's over my right shoulder. That's where guests are arriving as we speak. We're seeing a few arrive now, dignitaries, heads of state and so on. And we're expecting the Prime Minister and all living Prime Ministers to join him and, of course, the royal family out on Whitehall, which is the other side of this building, just before 11 o'clock. And there are thousands of ex-servicemen on Horse Guard Parade, which some viewers may be able to see behind me just down the road there. Thousands of them already gathering ahead of what will be a very moving ceremony in about 90 minutes.
And Adam, I mean, how many people are we expecting there today?
Well, already there are thousands of people arriving here. I've just seen several armed forces personnel arrive literally just behind the camera. Yeah, thousands. And as I said, you might not be able to see it here on screen, but in time we'll show you some of the live pictures coming from Horse Guards Parade. Thousands of ex-servicemen and women in the Royal Navy, the Army, and so on. So it will be a huge ceremony and something that's very important. It's the first time, actually, that the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, has, of course, it's his first Remembrance service, but it's also the first time that he's been joined by all his living ex-Prime Ministers, going back to John Major, so they will join him and as he lays a wreath in front of the Cenotaph along with the King. King will be leading that ceremony, of course, saying a few words, and as I say, they will be arriving in the next hour or so. Timings are approximate, but we can expect them to arrive relatively shortly.
OK, Adam, thanks very much indeed. Yeah, we'll be joining you a bit later on then when the crowds begin to gather. Russell's been in touch, says, my old dad was severely wounded at Arnhem. 9 machine gun bullets.
Oh.
He was 18 years of age. The field hospital managed to remove 7 bullets. 2 were left because they were too close to vital organs. They eventually killed him when he was 44. We will remember them.
Oh, dear me. Dear me.
That's what we were talking about earlier, isn't it? Is that we talk about remembering the fallen, but there were people who fell the rest of their lives slowly. PTSD, all sorts of problems. It was sometimes the people who came back suffered too.
Interesting point from John, who says, can you give a mention about the seafarers who lost their lives? The Merchant Navy lost the biggest percentage of its numbers of any of the forces.
With those terrible Atlantic crossings. Oh, the Atlantic convoys. Yeah.
And William says, my wife and I went to Antwerp to commemorate their 80th liberation and to remember my grandfather, who was one of 22 Belgian resistance who was shot by the SS in the last days of fighting. It's where my father met my mother, whose family looked after British soldiers.
Oh.
I mean, it's just, you go through these stories that affect so many of us, and they're just absolutely horrific.
Yeah, Brian says, my grandfather was a Royal Marine, the other a miner. My father was in the Gloucesters, my mother in the WAFs. I was in the Royal Navy. My brother and his son were in the Army. We've all tried to do our bit.
Doing our bit. That's what not enough people are doing. I mean, I haven't done my bit. I've never served. But, you know, it's... hopefully I'd do whatever I could if the time ever came. But we've got to give respect to those people who do their bit and are doing their bit right now.
Pat says, my dad was on minesweepers in World War II. He was sunk at least twice. He spoke little of what happened, and when he did, it was in a jokey way. He had nightmares, though, for years after. Jobs were hard to find when he was demobbed, and there was no help around in those days.
Well, part of getting that help, part of getting respect for the armed forces is perhaps to make sure our children understand exactly what it's all about and what people have sacrificed for our freedom. It's our poll of the day. So far, 97% of you say schools aren't doing enough to get that message across. 3% think they are. We'll have the final result in Nana's show later, and if you want to take part, go to gbnews.com/poll.
Yeah. Still to come, Ireland's Taoiseach is breaking from tradition and skipping today's Remembrance service. Find out why next.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Online dating apps are still the go-to for millions of British adults, with 1 in 10 using them to look for a romantic connection.
Yes, are you one of them? Let us know. But with many apps introducing subscription fees and complex algorithms, the world of online dating has never been harder to navigate. So who better to join us to discuss this than Mr. Tinder himself, Stéphane Pierre Tomlin. You have been dubbed Britain's best-looking eligible bachelor.
Yeah, so this happened back in 2016. Got an email from Tinder, and it was like, you're the most swiped man on Tinder.
So just explain to us, for viewers who don't know, what is swiping? What does that mean on Tinder?
Yeah, so on Tinder, the app, if you swipe left, that means you don't like the person in front of you. And if you swipe to the right, that means you like that person.
So do you mind still being associated with that? It's a good thing.
Well, I mean, yeah, it made me who I am now, and I love sharing how I was successful, and now I'm like a dating expert.
What's your situation now? Are you with anyone? Are you still single?
So I'm seeing someone at the minute. Things are going well, and I'm a dating expert, so I'm always giving advice to people.
Does she know your title of most swiped?
Of course, who doesn't? It's quite hard. It's quite hard being the most swiped man on Tinder because you get a label on you. So I find it harder than anyone else, to be honest.
And where did you meet her? That's the big question.
At an event.
So not on Tinder?
Not on Tinder, ironically.
So for All About Troubled Online, it's actually a real life rendezvous. Which,
I mean, I have met people on Tinder in the past, and it has worked. Well, it didn't work, but yeah.
I need to know how to do the famous Stefan Smolder.
That camera is not a camera. That is your best friend, that's your lover. So you really smash from the camera, so it goes like this.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now, at 9:34 on this Remembrance Sunday, it's going to be a special day, actually, for Neil Roberts. Now, he's going to play the last post at his 50th Remembrance service in a row.
It's a brilliant story and an amazing sound. Our West Midlands reporter Jack Carson has been to meet him.
A final rehearsal before the big moment. When Neil Roberts plays the last post at Pembridge's Remembrance service today, it will be the 50th year in a row he has done it. Neil grew up in the Herefordshire village, first picking up a trumpet when he was at primary school.
I started to try and play the guitar. I was taking lessons on the guitar, but I went to the local lesson and the teacher didn't turn up. So I was left there without a teacher, so I ambled around, found a trumpet, picked it up and never put it down again. So I learnt the trumpet instead of the guitar. And my local bandmaster suggested that I come and sound the last post for Armistice. So I turned up with my shorts on and went to sound the last post, and I've been doing it ever since, Jack.
Throughout the half a century he's been playing the bugle call, challenges like academic exams, working in London, having a family and travel issues have all tried to get in the way, but all of them have failed to stop him. Neil explains why he hadn't strayed away from the commitment.
Obviously, when I started at 12, I had some sense of what Remembrance Sunday was, but it has grown on me over the years. And then the fact that I've gone back every year, and this is my 50th time, it resonates the fact that it's an important role to play, and I'm glad I do it. I don't do it for the musicianship, because I've given up the trumpet, but I do it for the duty and the constant and the ability to participate in what is a very respectful remembrance process.
Over in Pembridge, preparations for the Remembrance Sunday service are underway. Graham Hudson is the chairman of the Royal British Legion branch here, and he wants to make sure Neil is recognised on this momentous occasion.
Thank you so much, and I hope you enjoy the day. We've got the Vice Lord Lieutenant, this is an unusual accolade for you, presenting you with a county certificate. I shall give my normal bottle of whisky to you, and we have and will have a really big turnout for you. We can't clap because it's a formal occasion, but people will be looking at you and saying thank you.
As the last post sounds today, the nation will fall silent, and with his trumpet polished, Neil's ready for the 50th year in a row. Jack Carson, GB News.
It's an achievement, especially with 50 years, 50 consecutive years doing that.
Yeah.
On doing something which is difficult to do, actually.
It must be very difficult to do. You've been in touch, though, with some amazing stories just from your own families. Susan says, my lovely granddad was away fighting in North Africa for 3 years during World War II. My gran didn't know from one day to the next whether she'd ever see him again. He was one of the lucky ones, though. He did come home. My mother didn't really know who he was when he came back.
Ah, dear
I think
me.
that happened a lot, didn't it?
Yeah, and, you know, but it is also, you've got to think about the families. And even now, I mean, there's obviously a lot more communication now, but still, families are on tenterhooks.
Martin says, my great-uncle Ronnie was in the Merchant Navy. He was sank 6 times and repeatedly got back on the next ship. How you do that, I can't imagine.
No, bizarre, isn't it? An interesting one who says, when I served in the RAF, 76 to 86, it felt good to wear the uniform off base. Now I understand it's frowned upon. Yeah. It's
not frowned upon, it's advised against.
It's advised against because in case it upsets our recent arrivals. Well, that's not really the case. But it's a safety issue. Yeah. It's a safety issue. I mean, a lot of it in the wake of the tragedy around Lee Rugby in Woolwich. But the idea that it is a safety issue and that soldiers are not safe off base in case people attack them.
It should be the exact opposite.
Oh, yeah.
We should be proud to see them walking around in their uniform, but no. Chris says, my father went to do his pilot training in South Africa. The ship was torpedoed on the way back. Only 7 survived, including my father. I still own every flight log from the flights he did. That's a remarkable story too.
Oh dear. Dave says, my 2 granddads were in World War II. One was an Italian prisoner of war camp in Coventry.
Yeah, there were.
The other was in Burma, died of skin cancer after being hit with a flamethrower. Good grief. I mean, it's just horrific. It's horrific, and we must not forget any of these stories, actually. Oh, interesting, because our poll today was about teaching kids about all of this. David says, last June I asked my granddaughter what she thought about D-Day. Her school hadn't taught her anything about it.
Oh.
She had an impromptu lesson from me.
That is so awful, because D-Day should be something everybody knows about. I mean, it was the biggest invasion fleet there has ever been in history. And it was remarkable, and it was successful, and it was the start in freeing Europe.
It should be.
How can it not be taught?
It should be there every year. Kids told about it every single year.
Yeah.
Anyway, look, a break from tradition. The Taoiseach over in Ireland, Simon Harris, will not travel to the annual Remembrance commemoration in Enniskillen in County Fermanagh today.
Well, GB News' Northern Ireland reporter Dougie Beattie joins us from Enniskillen, where preparations are underway for this morning's service, and can tell us more. Over to you, Dougie.
Well, good morning indeed. Welcome to County Fermanagh, one of the most beautiful counties in Northern Ireland. But yes, from 1987, the Taoiseach has always came to this particular Remembrance Day. And in fact, this particular Remembrance Day has now become really the centre of the Remembrance Day parades because of what happened here in 1987. 1987, the IRA detonated a bomb while they were all gathered round the memorial behind us, killing 12 and injuring 63 people. The rest of the world were absolutely disgusted at what had happened. It caused an extradition treaty between the Republic of Ireland and Britain to be put into place, something that had never happened before. And ever since then, the Taoiseach has arrived here. But what may really be behind this, of him not coming, is that there has been a general election called in the Republic of Ireland, so he could well be campaigning. But Sinn Féin, who are also standing in the Republic of Ireland, and don't forget they were the political wing of the IRA, for the first time ever today, Michelle O'Neill, who is the First Minister of Northern Ireland and the Northern leader of Sinn Féin, will have to lay a wreath at the Cenotaph.
Oh dear, apologies, that line's gone down. We'll try and get that sorted out. It's just some of these stories coming through are just so shocking, but so important to remember. Paul says, I'm holding my mother's uncle's official scroll of remembrance. Charles Benjamin Badman, Lance Corporal 582-7896, 4th Battalion, Suffolk Regiment. On leaving home and heading overseas, he handed my mother his only possession, which was his Bible, and asked her to look after it for me. He died at the age of 25 in Burma as a prisoner of war building the Burma Railway. We know how many people died doing that. He's buried at the cemetery in Thailand next to the River Kwai Bridge, and Paul's been there. My mother died in 2019. I buried her with his Bible in her hand. Oh, dear me. Dear me, isn't it just heartbreaking? Absolutely heartbreaking.
It is. I mean, thank you for so many messages and some really wonderful stories. And they're all, as one of our guests was saying earlier, they're personal, they're family stories, aren't they? And it doesn't matter really how long ago something like that happened, your family never forget.
Which is what I thought was interesting from the Director General of the Commonwealth War Graves Commission, who we spoke to a couple of hours ago, because they were saying, and it's shocking, but even from the two world wars, they're still recovering a body every day, and it's just now because of building work and farming and what have you, is uncovering bodies that were never discovered.
So it's the right thing to do, to repatriate them. Or to bury them.
And some they can identify and some they can't. But even those that they can't, and they may have been in the ground 100 years, they're still buried with full military honours. And isn't that important? Because it's a case of saying we might not even know who you are, but this is a mark of respect for whoever you are.
And that's why the tomb of the unknown soldier is important.
So important, yeah.
Because the body inside that tomb is unknown. But in a way, and it's also where it is in Westminster Abbey, you have to walk round it, even if you're royal. There's no, even if it's a royal wedding, they have to walk round it.
And they leave a bouquet on it.
Yeah, and a royal bride will leave her bouquet on it. And those things are terribly important. And the first royal bride who did that was the Queen Mother. And she did it because It had only just been placed there in Westminster Abbey, and she got married shortly afterwards. But she lost her brother in World War I, and so she sort of put it there for him because she even thought it could have been him because he was lost. And that's the importance of it. If you've ever been, or if ever you want to go, it is remarkable. It's just there, but the respect it is given is worldwide. People come from all over the world to see it.
It's quite something, actually. John Nichols, former RAF navigator, has just written a new book about that.
Which is brilliant, by the way.
And he's touring the country about it, but it's a fascinating story because it's something that gave hope to all of those whose family members did not come home to think, well, maybe that is them. Yeah. It could be them, actually, in that grave, which I think it's a brilliant thing that was thought of with that, as heartbreaking as it is. We have got a very special remembrance programme coming up this morning at 10 o'clock. Michael Portillo's going to be hosting that. We're going to find out what he's got in store for us in just a few minutes.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Welcome back to Sunday with Michael Portillo. Well, drinkers have been warned about a drop in the quality of French wines after poor weather conditions hit this year's grape harvest. Winemakers across France will make 240 million fewer bottles of wine this year, the country's farming ministry said on Tuesday. So should we think of switching from French to English? I'm joined now by sommelier and founder of Inflorescence Wines, Jacinta Madison-Williams. Hello, Jacinta.
Good morning.
Nice to see you. First of all, let's just think about the poor French. Has this been a fairly universal weather catastrophe for France?
It has. Kind of across the board, we're about 22% down on last year's crops, which is quite significant. I think it's like one of the 4 years over the last century that have been this low. So. And
it's affected both quality and quantity?
I would say more so quantity. There's always ways of counteracting quality. It depends if people are desperate to make wine. They can obviously push out more watered down grapes. There's been a lot of rain, if you hadn't noticed. Not only in France, we felt it here too. But lots of frost, supercell hailstorms have completely wiped out some crops. So in some cases, there's nothing to make. In other cases, it's just really watered down grapes and you want to pick earlier to make sure you're avoiding all those rains. But I would say more so it's quantity. But saying that, France is still the biggest producer of wine in the world. It might be taken over by Spain this year, but as a consumer, don't panic. We're not going to run out of wine. And we obviously have lots of lovely wine growing here now in England. So whether we do make a little jump for a bit to English wine, but there's definitely still lots out there.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about?
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe. Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
A 100-year-old veteran is sharing memories that frankly bring a tear to her eye, she said, this Remembrance Day.
Yeah, she's Dorothy Brown. She was a visual signaller in the Women's Royal Naval Service during the Second World War, and Will Hollis went to meet her in Hertfordshire.
I always want to cry in remembering my youthful friends who were killed during the war.
80 years have passed since Dorothea Barron served to protect her country. In 1943, aged 18, she joined the Women's Royal Naval Service and, as a visual signaller, trained the men heading to Normandy.
I feel very proud that I did my bit for my country.
Stationed in Scotland, she kept her role a secret.
You never talked about your job to anybody, so you didn't know what the sailor who was sitting beside you in the train did.
Now, living in Hertfordshire, she's sharing her story with the world. Reaching her 100th birthday, the centenarian celebrated with a trip in a Spitfire, plus a party organised by her daughter Katie. And a very special card.
This brings our warmest congratulations and heartfelt good wishes on such a special occasion.
Wow.
And it's signed Charles R. and Camilla R. And your name's at the bottom of the card. I have huge respect and admiration for her. My breath is taken away by the fact that she has reached 100. That is no mean achievement.
Despite her age, Dorothea says yoga keeps her body young. And her memories of Britain at war are as vivid today as the moment they were made.
I can still remember London burning when they concentrated one day and night on London, and it was a mass of flames.
Some memories are easier to carry than others.
Our youth was taken away. There were no teenagers. You had dances, but you were dancing in uniform.
As the country pauses this Remembrance Sunday, Dorothea will too.
I feel very proud that we're still remembering those people who gave their youth for their country. And they were doing it for their country.
Will Hollis, GB News, Hertfordshire.
I love the way she keeps fit and supple.
She's incredible, isn't she?
I mean, that's very impressive.
I think I might have to start doing yoga, looking at her.
Definitely.
But it's people like that saying she's done her bit.
She certainly has.
Absolutely remarkable. Dorothy is going to be part of our very special Remembrance programme today, hosted by Michael Portillo and starting at 10 o'clock this morning. And Michael joins us now. Hi, Michael.
Good morning. Yes, I have the extraordinary honour of meeting Dorothea Barron later today. She's coming into the studio. I just can't tell you how privileged I feel about that. A marvellous woman. We'll hear a bit more about her story. The programme is going to be on from 10 o'clock till 1 o'clock. That means that on GB News you can follow live coverage of the events at the Cenotaph in London. We'll also be crossing over to Enniskillen for the ceremony at the Cenotaph there. Of course, Enniskillen was the scene of the Poppy Day bombing and has now a very special place in Remembrance Sunday. So Remembrance Sunday, a very historic day, goes all the way back to the first Armistice Day of 1919. The Cenotaph was inaugurated in the following year, 1920, and we have pursued the 2-minute silence ever since, now concentrated on Remembrance Sunday. And as in every other year, today we will see the royal family gathering, along with the political classes, the military, of course, civilian organisations, other services, and very importantly, 10,000 veterans who will disperse at the end of the parade past the Cenotaph. And they will parade also in front of the Prince of Wales, His Royal Highness. A very special day in the nation's calendar. And I'm very proud to be able to present this programme today so that you may join us on GB News and follow all of the events today, Remembrance Sunday.
Michael, thank you very much indeed. Look forward to that from 10 o'clock. Just an interesting point through from Jag4, who's been in touch. Morning to you, who says, as a veteran, I would like to thank our current service personnel for taking the baton from us. And I would also like to remember the women who turned up at the factories in 2 world wars to provide the men in their lives with the ammunition they needed to keep us here today, still free.
Yep.
It's beautifully put.
Very nicely put. So many people have been in touch, but continue getting your stories in, because I know Michael will want to read them too. And it is lovely that so many people understand how important today is. To them and to their families. Doesn't matter how young or old you are, you should know.
And I say, often we're remembering people from those 2 world wars, but there are lots of you who will be remembering people who've died much more recently. than that. And if you are doing that, we'll be thinking of you as we remember those in our own lives as well.
So that's it from us. Do stay tuned, because Michael Portillo is here. Right now, you'll want to know the weather.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook for the rest of the day. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. After a cloudy start for many of us this morning, there is some brightness on the way as we head into the new working week with some sunshine on offer for most of us. However, back to this morning, and it's quite a grey and cloudy start as it has been over recent weeks, particularly across the northern half of the UK. Quite a damp start too. An area of rain pushes its way eastwards as we go through this morning. There will be some brighter spells across the southern half of the UK, these few and far between though, and generally a cloudy end to the afternoon. And temperatures a little bit above what we saw yesterday, still a little bit above average for the time of year, maybe 14 or 15 degrees in the south. As we go through the rest of today, that rain band continues to push its way eastwards across parts of Scotland. So for the majority of Scotland, it will be a drier end to the day and quite a clear end to the day as well. Those clear spells persisting for many. One or two isolated showers across the very far north, these perhaps turning